Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, we are going to talk today about religious bias in higher education. Recently, at the OU, Oklahoma University, there was a kerfuffle of sorts. A student wrote an essay and received a 0 from their professor. The professor has since been suspended on academic suspension for giving this grade while they investigate it. The claim by the student is that she was given a 0 because of her religious beliefs that she wrote in her essay from her viewpoint. And the professor denies this and says, well, no, you got a 0 because you didn't follow the assignment. Regardless of the truth of the matter, tonight we're going to be discussing, is there a religious bias in higher education? And should there, if it exists, be religious bias in higher education? We got some great guests tonight, and I'm eager to give them the mic and start this show. We're going to start off with Streamrift. Streamrift, tell people who you are, what you do, and your thoughts on the matter. Go ahead.
My name's Joshua Stacy. I do software engineering and startups. I really like pretty much anything you can do with a computer. I'm a free speech absolutist. And I also, oddly enough, experienced sort of religion and secular world strangely in contrast growing up. I grew up largely up until about 10 in Utah as a Mormon, where I was going to school with other Mormons. And then I moved to New York, and there were very few Mormons there. And I learned about the differences between what my religious preferences were and sort of the social contract. And so I found the contrast very clear when I moved to New York and I was in the minority. Part of the great American compromise is the fact that we can all get along within certain frameworks. And part of that is actually understanding, or at least tolerating and respecting other views without imposing those on folks. And it sounds like that's exactly what this teacher was doing to the student.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and we'll get into it as we go. GenZ Attorney, please.
All right. Well, thank you for having me again. Hello, everybody. I'm Scotty O, aka the GenZ Attorney, and currently work as a licensed attorney in North Carolina. Been quite busy as of late because I've actually left the firm I was at. Now I've started my own firm, which has been a whole hassle getting that off the ground. But things are flying along, and it's pretty exciting. I do a little bit of everything, legally speaking. But as far as well, I guess, yeah, you can find me on YouTube, GenZ Attorney. I do a weekly show with Ryan Mullally talking about America's founding principles as applied to modern issues. So that is the Ordered Liberty podcast. You could find that on YouTube. For our topic today, this one, from what I see when I read this article, could it have been written as a better essay? I think we can all agree on that. But was it a 0? I don't think so at all. I think this professor didn't like what was said, and then that reflects in how the professor responded, both in the commentary the professor gave back to the student, as well as the other professor stepping in and echoing largely the same thing. So I think it's admittedly a relatively small example of the broader issue. Honestly, my hope is we could talk about some of the more broader issues. Of course, this is our springboard launch point, but just the broader systemic issues with the bias and discrimination going on in higher education. So I'm looking forward to talking about all of that as we get into it.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I'm eager to get into it as well. So thanks for being here. Last but certainly not least, coming in as apparently the only guy on his side. We had a teammate for him, but I don't know where he is. Soy Pill, go ahead.
Yeah, especially in this situation, but probably in general, I'm here to argue that we should have more religious discrimination. I'm not against religion in principle. I think if there's ways you were raised and it gives you comfort, it brings a lot of good to the world. So I'm not like one of those, militant atheists who's going to chase around people and be like, how dare you believe in your sky god. That said, if you're in an academic institution and you're using religion in any way to justify decisions, even if those are good ones, it makes me question your authority and your judgment. If you're not looking at the consequences of your actions, but rather judging them based on, hey, well, my book said that I should do this. I'm not going to trust you, especially when you use those for justifications of psychology or medicine or any of those things. Yeah, they can lead to good things and they can also lead to terrible things. I think that should be completely removed from academia. And especially in this case, if you read her essay, it's one of the worst written essays I've read, especially for a college student. But second, it doesn't even cite sources like the Bible properly. Did it deserve a 0? Maybe not. Maybe it deserved a 10. It definitely deserved a failing grade and did not address the point of the assignment. And I'd be curious if both of you have thoroughly read the essay and acknowledged that and looked at the guidelines. But yeah, ultimately, I think we need more religious discrimination because the response to this was to put the TA on administrative leave. And if you look at her response, it's one of the most level-headed, nice critiques. I would have called this person a dipshit and failed them immediately. This person was actually very kind and soft, and somehow that got her suspended on the basis of religious discrimination. Fucking stupid. This student had no business being in higher education. I think she's literally there because she's on a sports scholarship for tennis or some shit. DEI hire, more religious discrimination, please. This person sucks.
Okay, and with that, let's kind of open it up. The floor is yours. If you feel like you're being talked over or need to get a word in edgewise, just DM me or raise your hand or something, and I'll try to help you get in there. But the floor is open. Go ahead.
I guess my first question to not you, GenZ lawyer. Sorry, can you remind me of your name? My other opponent, because I have Josh. Thank you. I have streamer mode on, so it cuts your name off. Did you read the essay, and do you think it is deserving of like any amount of points, given the quality of writing and substantive amounts of arguments that it fails to make?
Yeah, well, so two things. I came here to discuss more the substance of sort of the edge of the conflict here versus the specific item there. So I will full disclosure agree that I haven't read it, and if you're providing a summary, I'm just going to assume you're not talking out your ass. So if there's points you want to make off of that, that's on me for not prepping. Go for it.
I have.
And I would also just.
I can read you some excerpts just if that makes you change your mind at all.
Well, let Chris finish his point, and then you can read it. Yeah. I'm sorry, Josh. Finish his point. My bad.
Okay, yeah, I'm like, okay, Chris.
Well, I got a raid from Chris Speaks just now. So
at least I asked his freaking name, Wig.
That's fair. That's fair. And so here's the thing. I'd also like to know more from you when you say we need more religious discrimination. I'm curious as to what that would look like. That's
maybe before we get, because I agree. I also want to have a broader discussion, but I think because, like I said in the opening, the launch point is the article. Certainly, yeah. If Soy Pill, if you want to go through it, like me and you can talk about it maybe more in depth, and then Josh, as you hear what we're talking about, if you have thoughts about it, then by all means, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to start with the essay itself, because this is just like reflective of what I think should happen. This would be an example, by the way, Josh, of, hey, like I said, this is not enough religious discrimination given the fact that a TA was let go because of this, or at least put on administrative leave. We don't know what's going to happen.
What's the line for when we can and cannot let a TA go? You say obviously that line's crossed. What is that line?
The line being that they had a reasonable response to a failure to meet an academic credential, and then this person is claiming religious discrimination because there's a wave of right-wing hate mob that think this person deserves awards and speaking events. Okay. So they've bullied the institution into laying this TA off, even though the TA did their job perfectly. Despite
your hat, you're making a lot of sense.
Thank you. It's ironic, but It gets people sometimes. Well, here's the thing. So I'm not going to read the whole essay, even though it's only 650 words and it's not very well written. So we could get through it really fast. But the point of the essay, and GenZ lawyer, please feel free to correct me if I've done this at all wrong, was to go through this article, use the methodology of empirical psychology to have some sort of, opinion on it and cite your sources. So this is an academic science class, and I'm just going to read you a couple excerpts from this. These are out of context, of course, but if you want to read into the thing, it's not very long. We can bring up the images on screen. It's about gender roles and whether or not gender roles can be broken out of, whether or not they're harmful, all things that you can have opinions on, and they were encouraged to give their opinions on. One thing she said: women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. I personally believe that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental, as it pulls us farther from God's original plans for humans. Society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders and everyone should be whatever they want to be is demonic and severely harms American youth. So other than writing like a third grader, she doesn't cite the Bible. She doesn't cite statistics about how this could harm people. And specifically in the response from the TA, she says, hey, you have an opinion that I think is okay to express, that gender roles are good. You have not substantiated this in any way. You have not provided any data. You just say, this is my, God experience and God said so. And therefore, I have given you a fail grade. And the professor, who, by the way, just to make it clear, a lot of people are saying that this TA failed her because she's trans or whatever. And it's like, oh, like they got all offended. The professor also concurred with the TA and said, yep, this clearly does not meet the merits of the assignment. I would mark this as incomplete. This is not very well written. This is not substantiated. So all this to say, someone comes in, gives a piss poor essay, and then somehow gets the TA late or put on leave, I think is evidence, at least in this case, that we should be discriminated against religion more, because otherwise they're going to get an inch, take a mile, and retaliate in ways that I don't think are warranted.
So I have a question for you. As you've looked at that, and just assuming that you're not wearing a dingus hat, do you think that the setup for the assignment was inherently pointing in a direction? Because I'm looking at what looks like it is right now. It doesn't even look like it's saying, under this scenario, right, imagine where there's any pushback on any specific gender view.
So are you saying, do you
some
think that there was like there was a bias in the instructions?
Like, so for example, if I was a teacher and then there was a student, I said, write me this essay on why it's okay for two same gender to have a marriage, right? There's an inherent conflict with the assignment where there's a
it's predetermined,
right. And it
opinion,
doesn't look
right?
like it's set up like that. It looks like
no. And here I can link this in the chat right now, but this is
Yeah.
the instructions. I think this is the chat for the PIT. It says, 1, does the paper show a clear tie-in to the assigned article? 10 points. 2, does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary? 10 points. And 3, is the paper clearly written? And I think this is worth reading out. But the response to this, and again, this is incredibly light. This is like so kind to this dipshit who does not deserve this amount of kindness. She should be laughed out of a room. Says this. This is from Mel Kurth, the TA. Please note that I am not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead I am deducting points for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the questions for this assignment, contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and is at times offensive. While you are entitled to your own personal beliefs, there is an appropriate time or place to implement them in your reflections. I encourage all students to question or challenge the course material with other empirical findings or testable hypotheses, but using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings of not only this article, but the findings of countless articles across psychology, biology, sociology, etc., is not best practice. She goes on to discuss the contradictions, how saying something is demonic or something like society pushes lies is an unsubstantiated claim, and just kind of like tears it apart for what it is, which is a poorly written essay with no substance whatsoever. I don't think this is religious discrimination in the slightest. Now, does the professor have a bias because she's grading a paper on gender ideology and is trans? Probably. But that doesn't mean that this person didn't deserve 0. And I don't think this is religious discrimination. I think there should be more, because this person was able to become put on leave because of this, even though she gave a really, really nice response. So,
well, what is the article they were meant to comment on?
That's what I was
okay. So they
that here.
Just real quick. I'm not sure if there was a specific article that they were assigned, or if they had to choose an article within the topic. It's not
regardless, it's kind of irrelevant to the point. The article could have literally been no, it's not. If it could have literally been an unsubstantiated article or a Twitter post where someone repeats the same sentence like Bart Simpson with clapping emojis saying trans people are valid, and they still have to have a valid response to that, and they didn't.
Well, here's the thing. So the instructions for the assignment I've got pulled up, starting at the very beginning. It's you must write 650 words, double-spaced reaction paper, demonstrating that you read the assigned article. So it sounds like there was a specific article that was assigned. That specifically had, and I'd like to read the article just to see, because that would kind of weigh on the our analysis here of whether or not her response tied into the article. But
wait, hold on, wait. Can you pause there?
Yeah.
What in this essay indicates anything was read in an article?
So, well, that's the thing. If the article is talking about gender roles and societal expectations, and when she's asked, it specifically says a thoughtful reaction to the material presented in the article. Because here's the thing. Here's my issue with what the TA did here. Sounds like it's a bit of talking out of both sides of the mouth. Because the assignment is react to this article, but now, so she posts her reaction, which is heavily based on her personal religious beliefs. Certainly, I'm not going to deny that. But then the TA commentary was, well, you needed to cite empirical sources and adhere to best practices. We're talking about like a freshman or sophomore level psychology class. Like this is a low level.
She's a junior, actually, I think, if I'm not
Um,
mistaken.
I found her.
Maybe she's taking a thing far below, or well, either way, it's above her abilities. But
Yeah, she's
again,
a,
this does matter insofar as I understand you're trying to say like, well, this was a thoughtful response with her opinions. But you have to understand is if you read this essay, even if you haven't read the article,
What is
there's
the
not.
essay? Full
Uh,
stop. What is the
I-
essay?
I linked it to you in the chat.
Okay.
the original essay.
If you read the original essay, there is not a single citation of even the article itself. There's no refutation. The article claims or the article discusses. She does not address the article whatsoever in this, unless she is vaguely alluding to the fact that it discusses gender roles. It's very, very poor, and it doesn't address the core concept, which is why it's an incomplete. Like even if she had all the same opinions and didn't substantiate it, she would have gotten more points if she was able to reference the article whatsoever, which she does not do.
So I think so. The main point I'm making here is that right. It's when the assignment it is a reaction assignment. Yeah, we're talking about like the essay is a loose term here. Yes, 650 words, but this is effectively, and maybe this is lawyer brain, but 650 words is nothing.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and so we're not talking about like an end of semester, end of course, capstone level essay where you're supposed to really be robust in your thinking. We're talking about a effectively
Weekly assignment, right? Or
it's
even like a discussion post. Yeah.
discussion post where I mean I don't know how many you guys have seen. I remember from my college days, like those discussion posts were rough. Like I this is not the best written, but I've seen a lot worse written. Maybe that's because I also was in the athletes world, and I've seen and had to tutor some of these folks. But
Yep, no, I agree with that.
yeah, when
Discussion
we're talking
posts are
about
usually very, very poorly written, in my
right, and
experience.
so when the assignment is to react to an article and nothing in the assignment criteria is talking about citing to empirical data and sources and studies and best
Show a
practice.
clear tie-in to the assigned article.
Okay, which that's why I say the assigned article is important to know what's actually in it because we need to know what was brought up so that way we can know if the response is a clear
Again,
tying or not.
even if the article was a Twitter post with the same words posted 100 times, what in her essay alludes to a single tie-in?
Well, so I'll just point to the next section though when we're talking about it specifically says please remember
Well, hold
your
on.
reaction
Can you address my
paper.
question?
Like
If you want to say that she should have got the 10 points for the thoughtfulness, sure, maybe we could talk about that. But what in her essay alludes that she has read an article or is pointing to something in the article? Where's the tie-in?
I believe the very first line out of the essay says the article is very thought-provoking, caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. So we're stating something pulled straight from the article, and now here's my reaction to that. So
Right. There you go. So
that
that is
seems
one
fine.
point of it, right? She addressed that the article said something. That is like the closest to a tie-in in this whole thing. And beyond that, I don't think she even references this at all. She is reacting to a single potential point or sentence without even properly discussing what that point was. It's like, I'm assuming an adjacent one. Now, we can pull up the article and see if this is even like a substantial, meaningful part of it. But clearly, this is her like gut reaction to, hey, this thing I disagree with. And this is not what God said, which is not, I think, completing the assignment.
I can't wait to see what the actual article is. I know you say
I will
drop in
put look.
chat,
I'll
and I
post
may-
it in the group chat, and then you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
all see.
Yeah, I was looking for it. I couldn't find it, but yeah, just to me, I keep going back to this point is that when the directions explicitly state, please remember that your reaction paper should not be a summary, but rather a thoughtful discussion of some aspect of the article. And it sounds like, yeah, here she leads off with her, here's what I pulled from the article. And now essentially after that, here's an unmitigated stream of consciousness that's just basically word vomit at that point. Like, look, yeah, like I said, I'm not disagreeing that that final 5 points of whether it was clearly written. I think there's some deductions that go in there, but
Would
I
you
mean, the
would you
second
consider, if
category-
you were to guard this with the liberalism, not liberalism, what like the I guess the kindness and gentleness that you're currently displaying, would you give it a passing grade?
sorry, what was the first part?
If you were the person grading this, would you give this a passing grade?
Let's see, 25 points is passing. 'Cause that's the thing too. We talk about whether they get the 10 points. So 25 is passing. It's 10 for the clear tie-in, 10 for a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary, and then 5 clearly written. I think that second category, we can debate whether or not it is a thoughtful reaction, but at the very least, it is a response to the article.
Yeah, well,
and
anyone
not,
can react to anything, but what is that? 10 out
right.
of 25?
Well, that's
15 out of 25?
so I'd give the 10 for that. I'd deduct some points off the clearly written. Probably honestly 2 out of 5 on that, and then I'd have to abstain. I can't. I don't know out of 10 for that first one. How clearly tied in it is. I can't say.
Okay.
On that.
So let's say we give her half of those points, 5 of them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a 60%. That's a fail.
So that would be, I would give her 10, 5. Well, if I gave her 10 for the response, 2 for the written.
Oh, you're giving her 2 for the clearly written? What, because there are worse examples? Does this demonstrate college academic vigor in your opinion?
I have to keep in mind always, like,
are we grading her on a curve because we already know she's stupid?
I mean, lower down in college, like, it feels weird to say that, but it's like, yeah,
she's a junior, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's a 200 level psychology course. So
okay, sure. Level. Anyway, so that's a 68%, giving her a D instead of a incomplete, 12, which is still 5. A failing grade. So substantially that doesn't change.
I think it'd be a 17 is what I would.
17 out of 25 is 68%, which is a D. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a D plus.
I mean, yeah. So this is actually, I think, more beneficial to my point, is that there's a way you can fairly grade this article and still give it a failing grade. I think the 0 is where we had this issue here, where it just got marked down as you didn't meet any of the criteria, and for all these reasons that I'm giving, which I don't.
Can I read you the professor's response that substantiates the TA's response and see if you agree with that?
Yeah, you can read it. I've got it pulled up too, but yeah, you can read it if you want.
All right, let me grab it also because this thread is a little finicky.
Is it the TP USA Oklahoma thread?
That is the one, yeah. But
it is kind of out of order.
It's got all of it. Well, it's also a Twitter, so it depends on which ones it hides. Samantha's essay.
While you're looking for that, $5 from Zephyrhash to say same people who want merit over DEI now are willing to throw away merit for religious DEI. If you're in academia, engage with the topic like an academic.
Got it.
And then $10 from Zephyrhash, thank you for $10, says for top right, even if the topic is something you disagree with, you have to engage with it and criticize it in a thoughtful and empirical manner. Just the article being left-wing shouldn't matter. Thank you for the $10. Okay, go ahead.
Let me read it. So this is from Megan Waldron. She is not trans. She is the professor that has TAs. If you guys don't know, in college, usually you'll have like breakout little groups, especially for these like 400 people classes. I don't know if that's the case here, but your TA is like your mini teacher, who's directly grading everything. The professor, defers to other things and gives the lectures. So Megan Waldron says, Samantha, I am the other instructor for this course, and I've also taken the time to read your paper. I concur with Mel on the grade you received. This paper should not be considered a completion of the assignment. Everyone has different ways in which they see the world, but in an academic course such as this, you are being asked to support your ideas with empirical evidence and higher level reasoning. I find it concerning that you state at the beginning of the paper that you do not think bullying, teasing is a bad thing. In addition, your paper directly and harshly criticizes your peers and their opinions, which are just as valuable as yours. Disagreeing with others is fine, but there's a respectful way to go about it. That goes for discussion posts as well as reaction papers. Please employ more thoughtfulness in your future assignments. So it seems to me that this is an incomplete, not just because of, you didn't, address the article properly. It's also, hey, you were incapable of giving a thoughtful response that doesn't contradict itself, 1, because she does this several times, and 2, cites her sources that address the actual article itself. It's just, hey, I liked this, or I didn't, or I think this is bad, or I think this is good. And in a college psychology class, you have to give more than just, this is my reaction. It's my reaction plus, and if you're saying I'm reading into things, I don't know what classes you took into college, but if your reaction is literally, I think that was cool, you will get failed. And that's kind of essentially what she has done, which is not substantiate an argument whatsoever.
So would you basically categorize psychology as a soft STEM then? Because you're talking about it like it's something empirical and it's not just feelings, but it's mostly just a thoughts and feelings industry. So at some level, it is on par with religion because it isn't tying back to actual science.
Psychology has methodology, and it's not as hard as saying this is the observable law of physics because we don't understand exactly how the brain works, but I would absolutely put it far above feelings and reactions. There is a lot of science in it, and someone with absolute ritual. In what way?
They have their sacred ideologies that cannot be challenged. That's the defining edge of actual sort of science or engineering is, can we test it? Can we evaluate it? And in higher education, what we're talking about here, they've got ideologies that can't be challenged. That's not a scientific
Can you give an example of
experiment.
this? Because for one, the TA responded and said, you're absolutely allowed to challenge the ideas in this paper, but you have to substantiate it with, for say, hey, people are happier when they adhere to gender roles. Here's a study on that. Or B, people, who don't adhere to these things have a higher suicidality rate or something that would contradict those ideas. That was not off the table here. But what do you mean when psychology has like their taboo subjects you're not allowed to contradict?
Well, I hate making everything about gender dysmorphia, but we've got some challenges with understanding the basics of known physiology as we've studied them for as long as humans exist. I'm going to point to the broader point, which is I think that both GenZ Attorney here and I are more interested in a broader discussion versus the pedantics on this one. It sounds like it may or may not have actually met the rubric. And at least at first glance, it doesn't actually look like there's anything that would have prevented somebody from espousing a more conservative or more liberal view. It was just grab one of these jumping points and launch off, and it would have been a higher grade. To like literally wrap every thought I have on it is, and she probably got a slightly worse grade because the teacher was pissed off.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'm fully willing to
Yeah.
admit that, by the way, that this could have been like maybe like Jency said, a 40 out of 100 essay and not a 0. But calling it incomplete, I think, is completely fair. It's failing in either sense, and I don't think that difference in points matters, especially because this is probably a weekly assignment that's worth a small percentage of your grade. So
Yeah, well, that's why I think if maybe you disagree, this feels like a pretty high level of scrutiny that the professor, the TA, and the professor laid out in their here's why you got a 0 of like, well, once again, this is a reaction paper that we're dealing like this is like you said, kind of like a weekly discussion post. I don't know that the academic rigor of a end of term paper is applying to here. And look, I've got no source for any of the other discussion posts from this thread. I'd be interested in seeing them to see the comparable levels of responses and to see what grades those got, because I would wager a guess maybe they weren't as explicitly religious, but as far as the way they're written, their ability to cite empirical studies and data, I feel like they're probably all pretty much in the same boat, but I would have a feeling that no one else was graded in this way. And if they were, then look, I would take that back. But
yeah,
that's
well, I'll be
probably
charitable and say, yeah, obviously I would be of a different mind if there was like a comparably bad essay with no religious examples that got just far more points. I would say, yeah, there's clearly a bias. That said, then if you want to move on to the greater topic, because I think both of you don't want to die on the hill that Fulnecki is a good writer, because she's not. We could talk about whether or not we should have more religious bias or not, because that is the greater point, and we don't have to hinge on whether or not this person deserved a fail or not.
Yeah, well, real quick before we
Okay, so
move
you don't
on.
want to move off of it yet? We want to stick
no,
on
Not
it?
quite, yeah, just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more? Okay, fair enough. But then I do think there is a more interesting meta discussion to be had, but go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm looking through and I tried to find out this professor that checked it as well. Best I can tell is this Megan Waldron. She is a second-year graduate student. So
Well, then they were both graduate students. I was mistaken. It wasn't a
Yeah.
seniority and then graduate student.
yeah,
But just to
yeah,
be clear, the second one wasn't trans. Like, I guess that's the more
not
important
trans,
thing.
but she does have her pronouns next to her name on her discussion, which
Which
I
is
think,
pretty much trans, yeah.
well, yeah, well, not obviously. I'm not saying that's trans, but however, if you want to talk about the ideology that may attend to that, I thought we got rid of the pronouns in the bio after AOC and Liz Warren got rid of them years ago at this point, but some people are still sticking to it.
I always thought the pronouns bio were a little silly, even as the most progressive person ever, but I'll have you know that there are many people in many an academic institution that have absolutely zero political leanings other than I'm a scientist who just do it because it's the company policy or the UC policy or whatever university. So I don't think that necessarily matters as much. I maybe we can find some common ground before we move off it. Do you think that she should have gotten recognition from the Oklahoma House of Representatives for her being a shining light and addressing serious concerns in Oklahoma's higher education system?
I think that's where these things go too far. And you said something in your opening, I think, about what term you use, right wing online hate mob, something like that.
Sure. That's probably the nice way I said
something
it.
like that. And yeah, look, common ground. I'll agree with you there. I think there is that type of mob that whether it's this or whether it's what is it, the Cinnabon manager that was saying the N word to the Somalians, and now she raised like 200 grand or whatever on a
Yeah.
GoFundMe. Yeah, I think we it's an unfortunate thing that sometimes the absolute wrong people get elevated in
Get elevated.
spotlights.
It's so bad and annoying that I changed video topics midway through writing, and now I'm writing about this. So
Do we just to be clear, right? Streamrift or Josh, do you agree with your teammates? I guess summary of the things, or do you want to pick on anything else in this specific lens of the topic, or are we free to move on from here?
I think moving on is just more interesting.
Okay.
I think we basically covered it. Just to sort of wrap it, like I think basically most of us are now in agreement that in our reality anyway, she was probably judged a little too harshly, but she also just wasn't checking the box to do the thing. So I guess I'll give some advice, some chastisement, some nice ecclesiastical leadership here, and I'm going to suggest if you're going to choose to die on a hill indignantly, complete the technical requirements for it and be indignant, and then it makes this discussion far more interesting than dying on a hill and forgetting you need to actually hit the checkpoint as well. It's the two together. That's what makes it really pop.
yeah, and this is a little conspiracy, Brandon. This hasn't been proven, but it seems like this could have been a. I don't know if you remember the clock boy who like took a clock apart and put it in a suitcase, and Obama had to recognize him because he got faced with discrimination that like, oh no, people thought it was a bomb because he's brown, but it turns out that this was kind of a setup from his dad to get accused of doing this. It seems very similar because her mom is a Jan 6 lawyer, that they did this on purpose and wanted to make it a big outrage because they love grifting. But that's not substantiated. That's just my
Okay.
my opinion.
So are you
Yeah.
saying that they worked with the FBI on J6 then? Is that what the grift you're talking about?
No, it's that this person has
okay.
her mom has an ideological slant and very much wanted this to happen. Like this was a setup of, hey, make sure that this TA that you've been, complaining about over dinner at Thanksgiving, gets really mad at you with this essay, and we'll turn it into a big thing where you raise a bunch of money and go speak at TPUSA. But that's just a theory. I don't know if that's true.
Okay. I think we've kind of met in the middle for the most part, or at least resolved the specific essay at hand. I do think that there is a interesting conversation, however, to be had about general religious discrimination within universities and higher education. And I guess I would ask to Streamrift and to Gen Z, is there, in your opinion, religious discrimination in higher education? And if there is, can you give us examples of when this has happened? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I could start with one just because I had direct
Also,
handing.
just real quick, just as a housekeeping thing, do you guys mind if SFO jumps in to be?
Is he my former teammate?
I guess he's going to be your team. No, SFO Dev, you know him.
Oh, Dev?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
bring
guys
Dev
mind
in.
if
Dev
he
was
comes
mad
in?
he got shit canned from the Destiny one, so bring him in.
Okay, just
Yeah.
making sure you guys are all okay with it. Okay, go ahead, please. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I mean, one example I can point to, just because I had a direct hand in the whole situation, was back during COVID. I was in Virginia, and I was doing an internship up there during law school. And one of the things that was brought to our attention was the state, not even the state legislature, it was just the state Department of Education just declared unilaterally that the COVID vaccine was a requirement to return to on-campus activities. This was summer 2021, and we went through. We're like, okay, well, they're citing the statute as their authority. Let's go look at the statute. You read the statute; it enumerates like 10 different things that like the MMR, just everything you can think of, like the standard vaccine schedule. COVID was not on there, of course, because the legislature had not convened to change it, and so there was no legislative authority to do this. And in the law, when you do have enumerated things that are literally put into a list, by definition, things that are not on the list are therefore excluded. And so we got involved saying, you guys can't do this. You can't just unilaterally change it. Summer ended before anything came of it in court, but that was the broad policy. Then we had individuals that were coming to us. They heard about what we were doing, coming to us basically saying, "Look, I don't want to get the COVID vaccine, but they're saying if I don't get it, I'm not going to be allowed to return back to campus." And a lot of them were claiming religious exemptions. One girl even recorded the talk she had with the dean of students, who was talking to her. She said, "I've talked with my pastor. We concluded COVID vaccine is going to violate my religious scruples." And the dean was literally talking to her like her pastor was a doctor. Like you can get can you get a second opinion? Can you talk to another pastor and maybe get a second opinion on that? And so it was like just the level of disdain that I couldn't believe it when I heard it. But I know
Well,
that's
believe
just
it,
a
because
lot.
it's coming back. I'm already mad.
What, COVID?
No, disdain for this dipshit who asked her pastor whether or not she should get the vaccine, and that was her justification for whether or not she should do it. Well, this is
They
exactly
shouldn't
what I
even
was
have to
complaining
give a
about in my intro.
justification.
Well, you
Shouldn't
should,
even
right?
have to
Because
give.
this is about
No.
community protection. And if you say, hey, I am immunocompromised and this vaccine might hurt my person, or hey, this vaccine puts me at extra risk, these are legitimate exceptions that are recognized by a lot of institutions because, hey, this could be bad. But if your justification for doing anything that could affect other people is my fucking religious person told me to, I think you have no business in academia. I think you are absolutely devoid of critical thought and you should be ejected. Yeah, I think there should be more of this.
How do you get there?
Because you clearly don't have the rationality to analyze how your actions affect other people in any way but what does my book tell me? And that means that you could theoretically justify anything. Like, hey, my pastor told me that I should just fail people for being atheists, or my pastor told me, well, I don't think that's legitimate, a way to go about anything. I don't think these people have a belonging in a place of like thinking an institution. I think these people should be ejected.
I don't want to make this a COVID vaccine debate, but I think we all agree, though, that the vaccine, the protection you get from it is a purely personal. It protects you. It does not stop you from spreading
No,
it to other
that's not
people.
how it works. The vaccine also stops
not how the
spread,
script
and so
works.
insofar as that it gets rid of or it reduces your ability to transmit your viral load. And the more that it spreads between people who are unvaccinated, the more likely it is to mutate. The more likely it is to become a vaccine-resistant strain. We saw this with Delta. We saw this with Omicron, and then affect people who are vaccinated. So yes, it absolutely is going to affect the herd mentality if you don't get vaccinated, regardless of whether or not the singular strain on the singular person is going to do damage.
I do want to make sure that this doesn't turn into a COVID-19 debate. This is not the I guess the topic of tonight. We could touch on it a little bit, but I really do want to focus on the religious aspect of these things.
So, Soy Pill, then, do you think it's impossible for someone to have a sincerely held religious belief against just all vaccines? Like
No, that's like Jehovah's Witnesses have like super anti like most medical things, right? I don't think it's impossible for them to have it. Oh, do I think it's stupid no matter what? Yes.
Yeah, well,
I think any and all religious exemptions are probably the dumbest thing in the world. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can say they're stupid, but as long as you're agreeing, though, that people can have a sincerely held religious belief, it's not just.
I don't think they're being insincere. I think they believe in God and that God says, don't save your children from measles or whatever the fuck stupid shit.
So it's not just a unilateral declaration that, like, well, my pastor says I can steal your car, so therefore I'm stealing your car. It's like, no, these are like sincerely held religious beliefs.
Oh, sure. It's usually not super arbitrary, if that's what I was not claiming that. But what I'm saying is, if you are deferring to God or religion as your justification for doing a thing that affects other people, good or bad, I do not trust you in academia, and I think it's completely legitimate for you to be discriminated against. Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
On the off chance that you're wrong, who bears the accountability? The peasant that got jabbed with something that gave them Bell's palsy, or the great dictator from on high that's forcing their ideologies into other people's skin?
Can you repeat your question? On the chance that I'm wrong?
Yeah, so you've got these.
How do you?
Fair.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'll clarify. Thank you for the question. So imagine a scenario where there's a sweeping declaration in a town, and everybody has to get some treatment of some kind, whether they like it or not. A needle's going in their skin, something's going in their blood.
Okay.
Now, it was done against their will. Now, let's say there's an actual harm. They lose a leg. They have some new disability, some directly attributable problem. What's the recourse for that person? And why should, and the part B on that is, why should an individual be forced to take that risk and not be treated as an individual that can make their own decisions about what may or may not kill them?
Okay, so this is like a multifaceted thing with a lot of different issues, and I'll try to address all of them, but I might forget. So feel free to interrupt and say, hey, what about this? One, this is not just on the individual level. This is affecting other people because of what I described with the way that this is transmitting and mutating. So it is not just you.
I get that argument, but what supersedes that?
But yeah, what supersedes? So the beginning thing where it's like, what if this did cause harm? Well, what if it turned out that, like, I don't know, gasoline caused lead poisoning and it was hurting all of our brains? Well, it turns out this did happen, right? But to say that, like, I'm citing the potentiality of, well, we don't know if it causes harm, therefore I'm using this as justification for not participating in this institution, that could be a reason. And by the way, they're not forced to be in this academic institution. But then if your justification is, hey, because God said so, then I think it's better to discriminate against these people because they don't have a legitimate discussion. If these people were coming and saying, hey, here's a paper that demonstrates that this jab might do, what you said, limb loss, or this might cause adverse effects, and I am citing this as a reason I don't want to do it, I think that's a legitimate concern, especially if you're using some sort of science to question the science that they're trying to force upon you, or whatever you want to call it. But if this is going back to religion, absolutely, I think this is not a justification for doing anything.
Well, I think so. Once again, I'm still trying to avoid this being a whole vaccine.
Yeah, the vaccine, like
from.
This is your fault, Gen Z, for using it as an example.
You did it. And I'm trying to talk about him being an authoritarian that wants to force his will on others and kill them with mystery treatment, which is totally different. Totally different.
The point I'm bringing up with it is because, like, we can have an even broader discussion about religious discrimination. I'm trying to keep it focused to academic institutions and whatnot. That's why this one jumped out the most, is like probably the biggest one.
Let's jump on that.
But real quick on it though. So, like I said, I'm not trying to make this big vaccine debate, but Soy Pill, it sounds like your prescription for what should have been done as a matter of policy beyond academic institutions, as applied to the entire country, is that everyone should have been forced to get the vaccine. Is that what you're saying should happen because of the group risk and whatnot?
I might want to live in a world where that happens. I think it's better to potentially have, checks and balances and stops to this. And that's why I'm okay with institutions saying, hey, if you want to come back here, you need to do it. I think the world would have been a better place if most people were forced to get the vaccine in America. That didn't happen. That's not a world I live in, unfortunately. But yeah, I would have liked to live in a world where it's like, hey, if you want to participate in society, you have to do the thing that protects most of society. Maybe then we would have had less than, 3 million COVID deaths because people were not misled by information and bad science. So
I will drag us out of this, but Soy Pill, I have to correct the offensive logic. It's brutal. Mm-hmm. If we care about long-term survival of humans, every time we expose them all to the same thing, it creates a risk where everybody's been treated the same, so nobody can carry on. So if you want to keep the rats alive, you need different groups with different profiles.
I'm aware of the concept of genetic diversity, and I don't think giving everyone a vaccine for a disease that is spreading through the entire population is going to reduce our genetic diversity to a point where we all die. That's silly.
As promised, what is religious discrimination in higher education, and where do we draw the line? So I think forcing your ideologies on somebody is where I would draw the line on the academic environment to bring us right here, as promised.
Okay.
Soy Pill, what would you describe as the line? I think you like using the enforcement arm, so when does it feel good?
What is the line of when religious discrimination becomes, in the same way the civil rights protects race and age? Like, when has it gone too far?
Where's the edge? So, for example, if I was a psychology professor and I said, write a paper extolling all of the virtues of non-traditional marriages, and I had conservatives, this would be at its face an offensive task. Is that still pursuit of academics? I bring that up as one example.
I think writing the paper would not be a violation of the religious discrimination. However, if you were to fail them based on the fact that they are incapable of completing the assignment without lying, I think that would be religious discrimination. I don't think that should be allowed. So I think just based on what I said in my intro, religious people shouldn't hey, you believe in God, I'm not hiring you. Oh, you believe in God, I'm failing you. But when you use that as justification in an academic setting to say, hey, this is my evidence, it's God, then yeah, I think that's perfectly fine discrimination. So it crosses the line when you're taking your opinion on religion and inflicting that on someone who is not inflicting it back on you. If this person wrote this essay, she is inflicting this opinion on you and saying, this is my justification, therefore I don't think that's religious discrimination.
I feel like this is going to vary greatly by the academic discussion that's being had. If we're talking about, like the hard sciences and the rules of gravity and the laws of physics, then sure. But if we're talking about philosophy, then it's like lots of philosophy is derived from natural rights philosophy, Thomas Aquinas.
Sure, but this was psychology. But I think you have a good argument there. If this was talking about where do rights come from, If it was like an essay dissecting John Locke, it's like, yeah, citing God and God's justification or religious justifications, or maybe you're like, I did this. I took a class on the Bible, talking about the Bible and justifying it, using the evidence from the Bible. That's fine, right? That's not religious discrimination unless the TA is like, hey, I don't like the way you're talking about God, right? Like that would be when it steps over the line for me when it comes to hiring, grading specifically based on this evidence, that sort of thing. But when it comes to the reasoning, especially in these more sciencey stuff, and I know you say psychology isn't really STEM, it's not, but it leans into it. When your reasoning is just
No, it
God,
isn't. No, it doesn't.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you. They have
It's on
methodologies and
par
all
with
that.
religion. It's better religion. I'll give you it's a modern religion.
I've said there are scientific elements to psychology as a subject, but certainly there are plenty of quote unquote soft science where we're talking about nature versus nurture, the way people think, why people are the way they are. I think you can get really deep into religious discussions on that. So I don't think psychology is a complete absence of religion.
I mean, first of all, if it's allowed to be questioned, it's allowed to be reformed, and you have to use at least some sort of evidence, whether or not that's scientific evidence, but rather like, hey, I've looked at these groups of people and how they react to things, and you can somewhat repeat these. It is 100,000 times more, valid than religion to me, because religion has none of those things. But I understand it's not a hard science like STEM. Yeah.
It's thoughts and feelings, almost literally. It's a little better than that. Organized thoughts and feelings. I'll go that far with it.
Okay.
I think economics. Wait, do you think economics is a religion?
No, it's math. I like math.
Yeah, but then how can economists be wrong so often? Like, and why are there different schools of thought on math, right? Like, how can you have a different opinion?
An economist because we're guessing based off of variables. We're looking at trends to guess the future. The joke about a projection
isn't that what psychology
is?
One
thing that you're guaranteed. The joke about a projection, since you bring up economists, is that you'll know for a fact the one thing that's not going to happen is exactly what the projection was.
Right. So if they get it wrong so often, and by the way, I'm not trying to discredit economics, but I'm trying to allude that this is similar to psychology in the sense of this is not hard, this is the right answer. This is, hey, I'm analyzing all of these variables that we don't fully understand and projecting something into the future. In the same way, psychology can say, I don't know for sure how someone will react to this or why they think this way, but based on this collective data, this collective sample size, most people try to do this, most people think this way. I would assume this would happen. I'm not sure. That's kind of what psychology is. Economics uses more numbers.
So let's say everything's on a spectrum. And we say that intellectual property law is 100 points. It is solid STEM, right? We've got engineering, we've got all this. Okay, great. So then where would you put the other categories? Like, where would you put economists versus women's studies, for example, or psychology or philosophy?
So I've taken women's studies courses, and they're actually very concrete, especially when it comes to like historical analysis and all that. And there's some stuff that's like psychology based. If STEM is 100, I would put economics at like an 80, psychology somewhere between 70, 80, and then religion at negative 10 billion because it has nothing.
See, and I would give you 30 on religion if you'd give me 30 on psychology. Psychology.
Religion gets no more than 0.
Okay. Rather than having a debate on which is better, religion or psychology, we're going to focus on religious discrimination and examples of that within school. So we got Dev here with us. Thank you for joining us, Dev. Happy to have you. You're in academia. Do you?
I was at one point. Yes.
Do you think that there was religious discrimination while you were in academia, and how did that manifest?
I would say that there was some religious discrimination, but it was less discrimination, and it was more right-wing discrimination. Just that conservatives in general were not treated well by the academy, and that usually includes more religious people, right?
Okay, can you give us an example?
I think that, Oh, absolutely. I mean, here, I'll give you an example that is not one that I've personally experienced, but can actually be run down. Yeah, I see someone in the chat saying, is this a 3v1 now? Listen, I align with Soy Pill on most things more so than the other side, but I am going to talk about where the other side gets something correct before we get into it, okay? So, do you guys
before
know
you even tell your story, I do want to say, having gone to liberal college, yeah, there's right-wing discrimination, and maybe there needs to be slightly less of it, especially from the bias from TAs, but most of it's justified because they're fucking stupid.
Well, here's the thing, though, right? Because like, if you're in an academic setting and you say that you're like currently reading Mishima or Spengler or Evola, right? Like right wing philosophers. Best case scenario, you get like a side look, and maybe you lose a friend, right? Like there are some academic circles where like even just examining something neutrally, if it's right wing, will cost you. I think that's bad, frankly.
Sure.
So, and I guess to jump in there, typical. So coming into this, the prompt was, religious bias in education. Soy Pill, to your credit, being points for honesty. You're saying yes, there is. You're just saying it's a good thing, and there should actually be more of it. Is that so right?
Well, I'm saying there is some. I think there should be more, and especially given the reason we're talking about this shows me that there should be more. Specifically in this case, I think there's certain cases where you should or should not have more. I don't know. But if there are more examples that people could find of a religious person claiming discrimination when the reason they're discriminated against is because they use religion as justification for a proof or, some sort of action that they took that affected others, I think those people should be discriminated against. I don't think that should ever fly in an academic setting. And in my opinion, in most people's lives, but that's just an opinion. That's not something I think we should enforce.
So you mentioned conspiracy theories earlier. Do you think that perhaps this has gotten big to try to help everybody forget about a certain assassination?
Her name's Full Necky. How could you not think about Charlie Kirk when you read that?
But like, do you think there's any mysterious lovers out there? I know some people think on that they're doing this as part of some larger motif. Or do you think it's the random?
Do you think that is true?
Yeah, do you? I don't. No.
So I live by, there's a character in Deep Space Nine, and he says it, I think, quite well. He says, I believe in coincidences. They happen all the time. I don't trust coincidences. I think that's a little bit.
Which character said that? I haven't watched all
these. That was Garrick.
That was Garrick, okay.
Yeah, he was a tailor who didn't want war. That's sort of an archetype. So,
sorry, I'm a TNG guy. I apologize.
Oh no, hey, that's all right. We got some Worf references later too. I'm sure.
We can. God. Okay, fair enough. We have the baseline quote, but can you expand? You think that this kerfuffle is a distraction from the assassination of Charlie Kirk?
Let's just think. We'll tease it out since everybody's putting on their tinfoil hats with me, or at least hearing it out. So
I just want to know if this is something you actually believe, or are you just bullshitting?
I'm like 10% on it. I like to try to look at things from different angles. It rises to at least plausible, but I'm not convinced of it. This isn't a hill I would die on. It's a hill I'll acknowledge. I'll say.
So why? I understand, but why are we bringing it up if you're not prepared to defend it?
Well, I brought it up to see if anybody else is going in that direction and or was teasing at it. That's all.
Why, if the right wing are the people propping this person up, why would the right wing want you to forget about the thing that allowed them to rally their entire base around what is obviously an injustice and try to use it to further their goals? I feel like of all people, they would be the least likely to try to distract you from it, right?
Well, do you think it's just like there's two groups of individuals, or do you think it's more like sports teams where they sort of have their own PR moves, sort of like, I don't know, political campaigns?
Just to put it to rest, because it's like, why would they do this? Like, at least with the Israel conspiracy theories, there's like some merit to like, oh, because he might speak out against Israel or whatever. But with this, they're the people that want Full Necky to be a TP USA speaker, completely carrying on the Charlie Kirk legacy, are doing it to distract from Charlie Kirk. I don't think that makes any sense at all. I would give that a zero probability. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. We'll go in the other direction. Why the hell is this getting so much attention? 3 people who would be perfectly fine being disagreeable with people arrived at roughly the same thing. She should have gotten a 40%, and she probably got ragged a little hard because she was invoking the Jesus card too hard.
Because Republicans are professional victims and love to turn a grifter into a pundit when they don't deserve it. Same with Erica Kirk, same with Riley Gaines, same with Kyle Rittenhouse, same with George Zimmerman, same with fucking, what's his name, Ollie North. Like, this is a tale as old as time.
Okay. I see the argument.
I think it's true too. I think if you rewind back 7 or 8 years, you can find legitimate instances of, let's say, left-wing social overreach impeding on a right-winger unjustly. But that happened a few times, and I was going to talk about one of them before we sidetrack. That happened a few times, but as soon as it happened, and the right wing saw those people have a bunch of support rallied to them, and rightfully so, they're like, "How about we manufacture this now? How about we just claim it as many times as we fucking can, because there's clearly power in it." And I think that's what happens now, is that you have a few instances where a right-winger is legitimately a victim of something, and then you have like 90% of it is all just bullshit.
I'd say yeah, it's the same logic that our friends on the left do with groups like Black Lives Matter. That now everything has to be a BLM issue or everything has to be a Me Too issue. When so well, you've got several cases that are obviously clear examples of this, but then now it's everyone wants to claim the mantle, everyone wants to claim the title. Not saying that it's a uniquely right wing or left wing thing. I'm just pointing it out that yes, I'm going to agree, like I already agreed earlier. The right has an unfortunate problem of elevating some of the wrong people right now. But I don't think it's exclusive to the right.
Donald Trump.
Let me try this. What practices are common in higher education today that you think that academia should change in order to be more accommodating to religion?
I think it's pretty broadly accepted that college professors lean very heavily liberal, and I would assume that we would largely track that they're largely non-religious, if not overtly anti-religious. So if we're trying to reflect different voices, it would probably be helpful to have north of 2% representation, which I think some colleges can't even get to right now.
Wait,
in
so you
any
want
event.
DEI?
What's that?
You want DEI for religious people?
I don't think anybody that says that understands the framework of DEI.
I think if you think that's not DEI, I'm curious what you think DEI is.
Oh, no, other way around. I must hear your DEI definition.
Yeah, so my understanding of DEI is that you take groups that were historically discriminated against or who might be underrepresented, not because they're not as good merit-wise, but because of some sort of systemic injustice or some historical injustice, and say, hey, we're going to put extra consideration to make sure that these people are fairly represented or get a fair shot at the position that they used to not be able to. And it sounds like that's what you're saying should happen to religious people, yeah?
So you gave a very long definition there. Do you have a simpler one, or is that the most concise you can make it without losing the meaning?
Yeah, my simpler one is diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So what are so at some level so you said they're getting more preference or better preference. What was it that you had said, the way that we're enforcing this mechanism?
They get extra consideration and eyes on. So here's an example of how this happened when I was a software engineer. They said, hey, there's a tendency, especially in Silicon Valley circles, for people who are hiring to hire people that are like them. This goes for white people, for males, for Indian guys. Like, they're more comfortable around people that they grew up with or who look like them or who talk like them or who speak the same language. And they say, hey, it's not like you can't hire these people, but when you are hiring, make sure you look at all the candidates and judge them fairly and are not discriminating based on age or gender or any other race or anything like that. And you're purely saying who can do the best job. And then past that, it's like, hey, by the way, certain candidates have been unfairly discriminated against. So there might be some weights that they attach. This is kind of what affirmative action did, where it's like, yeah, maybe you aren't as good at the math score as this person. And there are legitimate arguments against this, by the way, but it's like, because of the historical injustice of XYZ, we put a higher weight on if you come from a socioeconomic background that's bad, or if you're black, right? These are both parts of DEI, and this is kind of how it manifests. And
if
it
we
sounds
start off
like
at equal treatment. No, we start off at equal treatment.
It's not equal
Then
treatment.
we start.
to be clear.
No, just hear me. Start from zero. I do first principles. So if we've got all candidates being treated equal, but then we have one group we're giving a preference to, adding that preference means it's no longer equal. It's just physics at that point. Especially if you're willing to call philosophy or psychology a hard science, then this is physics.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. It's clearly not equal. Some people get extra consideration. Yes,
And
which just sounds
all
like
right,
what you want for the religious people, right?
No, I'd like neutral treatment.
So just to be
So-
clear, you're saying that if there were neutral treatment, true neutral treatment, that we would have a higher percentage of conservatives in higher education as teachers, but because there is a disparity, or the disparity that now exists because there is a bias against either religious or conservative teachers. Is that the claim?
Well, I think
Yeah, it's largely ceded ground, right? Academia is already ideologically captured a certain way, and it's ideologically captured in a way that it is hostile to ideologies other than its chosen path.
Sort of, but
And
especially in empirical fields, it's the same way. Like, yeah, I could say it was hostile if a person came in and said, actually, planes fly because of God, but that's not discrimination on religion insofar as it's, hey, you are unable to substantiate why your theory is more correct than the theory of all these scientists. So the difference between this and, say, DEI for like a black person is you can point to a historical injustice and say, hey, it is clear that these groups of people have a lack of this opportunity to get these test scores, to be in this space and the money to get into these sorts of things. We're going to try to give them a leg up. And if you could establish that there were similar systemic injustices towards religious people, not a natural evolution of, hey, people get smarter, they get less religious, which is kind of what happens, but rather, hey, these people who are hiring are saying, oh, that guy believes in God, I'm not going to hire him. I think you would have a legitimate case for DEI for religion.
All right. So are you familiar with the Mormon Extermination Act?
I
am.
Why are you laughing?
No, it just sounds so evil. Like it sounds
What's funny
like
about a genocide?
No, it's not. It's not funny. This is like a nervous, like, holy shit, that's insane. I'm not laughing.
Okay, that's a good reaction. I like that. That law was on the books until the 1970s. So morons that believe that morality or the way we should live is dictated by the laws on the books and the way we interpret them sometimes don't realize that that logic doesn't hold water. Slavery was legal. Holocaust was legal. All these things were legal. So that's why we need to have a moral background.
Laws should come from morals, not the other way around. I agree.
I think law should exist to help protect individuals' abilities to essentially look out for themselves. And under the logic that allowed to flourish, families will generally take care of themselves better than government will. And a community full of families provide structure, and current academia villainizes that model. Other than that, it's not particularly hostile to conservatives.
Well, tell me more about this Mormon genocide, which happened before or after they decided that black people were allowed to join.
Well before 1838, Governor Boggs. It's called it's Executive Order 44, and the language is pretty clear. And so I bring this up because you say, well, historic injustices, and I say, okay, well, it sounds like we already agree, genocide's a pretty harsh thing for a religious group to try to survive. So we had state-sanctioned religious genocide. And where are Mormons today? It's one of the richest religions collectively in the history of humans ever. They occupy positions of power in real estate and property and reach all over the globe. It has not held them back. What they did is they had to go out and settle the desert. And to go sort of full loop on that, the price of freedom is frequently having to go out and build your own way. And I think that's where a lot of people that go to the government saying, let's solve the problem, don't realize the government is the problem. So
here's the problem here. I think you're conflating this discrimination, which is valid, by the way, and bad, with the systemic 400 years of Jim Crow and all these other things that were not happening with the Mormons, and saying, well, if this group could do it, why not this group? In the same way that people hold up Asian Americans and are like, they were poor when they came here, why can't they do the same? Well, the conditions were entirely different. Now, if you could show me, and I don't know, if you could show me that the way that these Mormons were kept out of institutions carried on to the same degree or in similar ways to the way that black people were or Mexicans were or any of this stuff in the 60s and 50s, then I would say, yeah, you have a legitimate argument that these people have been discriminated against and unfairly kept out, and they should get extra consideration insofar as they have been held back by the government or society. I agree with you, but I don't think that's the case here. Now, maybe I'm just uneducated on this, but I think that Mormons aren't discriminated against nearly to that degree, but maybe they are. I could be wrong.
Okay, let me read a couple super chats, and I want to get us back on track because I think we've kind of far afield, and I want to rein us all in to the topic at hand. I got to be real. I'm not hearing real strong examples of religious discrimination. But think of your strongest. These Nuts for $10 says, I am Wick. I like when my viewers give me money. True. Zephyr Hash for $5 says, the state that ranks 49th or 50th in education recognized a bimbo for a dumb essay? No way. The bias against religion put Oklahoma there, obviously. Thank you for the $5. $5 more from Alish. Which is the better outcome, having an adverse effect or being a corpse? $5 from Cameraman 502.
That's a reference to the vaccine, right?
Yes. This would be a perfect topic for an ordered liberty discussion. When does the societal override legitimate individual objections? COVID? Sure. Flu? Question mark. Chemi for $5 says, top right. Have you ever read a psychology paper? They use statistics, aka math, which you pretend to like, all the time. And then 100 ARS from Real Serious says slavery was legal in the Bible. So, thank you for the 10 pesos or whatever that is. Okay. Yeah. Can we get some more examples of religious discrimination in higher education? And then we could talk about it and whether or not
So
these are
I can give
good or
you
not.
I can give you solid examples of right-wing discrimination, but I don't know about specifically religious. But I mean, it's kind of related, I think.
That was going to be my point. Is like it's hard to point to specific examples of overt religious discrimination. To Dev's point, it's more so a general right wing distaste, which that has a heavy overlap with religion. That was going to be my point in response to the back and forth that y'all two were just having. Was okay. We talk about professors, and Soy Pill, you brought up the phrase DEI for religion. It's not so much that it's DEI, although I would say there is a meritorious case for diversity of thought as that's a positive diversity that should be sought after and encouraged. The issue that the current DEI folks are making is they're substituting in things like skin color, which I don't think really has much bearing at all on having a good, well-rounded institution. I think the diversity of thought is much more important. But that aside, the issue or the complaint here is not so much that there needs to be DEI. It's that, are we really having a meritocracy in the first place? Are religious Christian conservative professors, are they getting the fair shake to begin with as they try and get into academia, or is it being treated more like a good old boys club, to use that phrase, but of kind of you speak the slang, you know the lingo, you say all the right things, you rub the right shoulders, and then you get into it, and a large part of it is having the right politics, having the right philosophy.
Well, there could be something there, but unless you could establish again some sort of like evidence-based.
All right, no, here. So there's a social framework that is thrust upon those in academia that involves going along with other people's self-ideologies in ways that are harmful to them. Now, here's what it's going to be annoying about going down this discussion. There's a wide spectrum, and no matter what you dodge or pivot on it, it all goes back to largely ideologies driven to reject conservative views, which are largely the religious views espoused in having a traditional nuclear family. So if you want to look at it, a lot of the religions that value having families and value the nuclear family, the ideologies taught in schools require going along with frameworks that you find morally repugnant. And I think forcing people to go through something morally repugnant to receive the degree so they can go out and have the improvement in their career is more like a humiliation ritual in some ways than I'm comfortable with.
Who's forcing them? They paid to go there and get the degree.
So do you think, where is the choice?
When you paid money to go there and get the
degree?
degree. Yeah.
Well, I would point out too that
So I could just as easily say, "Oh, they're forcing me in med school to look at all these gross dead bodies?" And it's like, yeah, like if you find that
that's more
physically
dishonest.
repugnant. No, if you
At
find
least that's relevant to a tangible
yeah, no,
outcome.
actually, no, it's
Looking at
less
dead
dishonest
bodies so
because
that we-
religion is a made up thing in your brain that makes you think, "Oh, this is gross to me because of my opinion," and not I have a physical gut reaction to a physical gross dead body. That's more legitimate to me. And yet, I would never say that you're discriminating against someone who throws up when they see guts if they want to be in med school. Turns out you can't do the job if you get grossed out by bodies. So yeah, I think that's fine, and you don't have to go to med
what
school.
competence equivalent are you making for people having different ideological views on the traditional family or gender roles, as an example?
If you're able to analyze those academically and write essays that express your opinions and cite sources and have a different opinion, that is merit-based. And I think if you are grossed out by the lack of nuclear family, that's totally valid and you shouldn't be discriminated against. But if your citing is God said so, and that's your entire thesis for how you defend any argument,
why would
then,
you
yeah,
think that?
But hold up,
because of the essay that we were talking about, where she just said God said so.
I haven't been talking about her. Go ahead.
I'm saying.
Let Gen Z go. Gen Z, please.
Sorry. Just because it's a really apt point. The essay is specifically, it was a reaction essay about gender norms and gender roles in society, which, you may disagree. You can say, God and religion is all made up, but millions and millions of people believe that gender roles and gender norms are heavily dictated by their religion.
The professor said,
and I think
you can disagree with the opinion of the article, but you should substantiate why they are good or bad. And if your evidence is because God said so, then you're going to get a fail or an incomplete.
So from what I understand, the essay in question basically just cited the Bible, right? Like she didn't cite.
No, she didn't actually cite the Bible, because if she would, she would have pointed to specific passages. So was incapable of even doing that, which is why she got a fail.
Yep, because there are religious philosophers. You could cite Lewis, you could cite Chesterton. You could cite Burke. There are people out there who have written written papers and written books that you could actually bring in if you're doing this sort of essay from a religious or a right-wing point of view. I mean, it sounds like she just fucking sucked as a student.
Yeah, if she's going to pull off this stunt, she needed to actually nail the assignment as well. It was a point we had all agreed on earlier, I believe. If you're going to be righteously indignant, you better be accurate as well.
Well, let's be, I mean, okay. If we're going to adopt the view that gender is purely socially constructed, then isn't that conceding or admitting that there is no hard, grounded empirical basis to discuss that? Are we talking about if it's a pure social construct, then doesn't it have to be derived from the feels?
Yeah, but you'd have to substantiate why you feel a certain way about it, or why you think X should be done, or some prescription, and not just, well, my feels are this and your feels are that. If I think race is socially constructed and I cited every policy or thought about race with evidence of because God said so, that would also be a failed essay, even if race is just something we've made up to categorize people.
Are you ready to have your mind blown, Soy Pill?
Oh my God, I can't wait.
The whole way you think people look at how Sky Daddy said something is how some people view the way that you look at institutional material. You go,
Yeah,
well, according
but I
to
think
this
those
study,
people are
which
retarded, and you didn't blow my mind.
let me finish. According to this study, which is never in the which was
Will
clearly not
Streamrift
biased and was
blow
clearly
Soy
nothing but
Pill
the pure,
properly?
honest profession of truth, then we happen to be right. Reasonable person would be skeptical.
Yeah, well, the difference between me and dipshit religious person is if you presented me a reason or a refutation to that study, I would say, oh, it turns out it wasn't true. But if I showed you why your Bible contradicts itself 700 billion times, you'd be like, I don't care. That's the difference.
So do you feel he blew your mind properly, Soy Pill, or
I
was
I
it
am feeling zero blowing right now. I'm
Okay,
very
Damn.
very
upset.
low
Well, that is
blow.
the amount of
Yeah.
blowing.
So,
That's an acceptable amount of blowing.
Okay.
so like I've said a few times now, Wick, I can give you not religious
Go for
examples,
it.
but
Go
right,
for
but
it. For the
right-wing
purpose of
examples, okay?
for the purpose of having the discussion.
Of just getting things going,
Yes.
basically. Okay, so there's actually a really good book from a professor, Professor David Roberts at the University of Georgia, and he wrote a book called Fascist Reactions. No, sorry, it's Fascist Interactions. Sorry, and this book is basically a study of the study of fascism in Western academia from 1945 up until I think 2009 or whenever he wrote the book, and he basically went over all the various academic practices at various universities regarding how fascism was studied and presented to students at schools. And what he discovered is that there was an extreme left-wing bias in how this topic was approached in various courses, to the point that if you had a student or a professor who wanted to actually go back and read fascist writing, because the fascists had philosophers and they wrote papers and they wrote books and stuff, and I'm not saying any of it's good, but they had thinkers, and you can go back and read it if you want to know what they actually thought of themselves. And there was actually a trend from the 1960s pretty much up until the 90s or 2000s that you would be excoriated in professional academia if you wanted to go back and read fascist original sources. You had to read it through a specific lens that wasn't the fascist's own worldview. And he presented his argument in this book of why this was a bad thing for academia, because you should be able to approach these subjects neutrally with an open mind and open understanding of how these things are supposed to be. And to me, when I read that book, I was like, it does kind of tie in to, and I think last time I was on a panel with you, GenZ, you talked about this a little bit. It was something about how there's definitely a proclivity on the left if we're in very young academic spaces with very radical students or whatever, and they tend to stifle free speech. They don't want like conservatives running around on campus talking about what they want to talk about. There's a few videos of like a trans person flipping a conservative's table with all their pamphlets on it and yelling, "Get the fuck off my campus," and this sort of thing. And then in 2017, you had the Lindsay Shepherd story. Do you guys, any of you guys know about that? What happened with Lindsay
Sounds
Shepherd?
familiar.
Yeah. So she was teaching a class. She's a TA teaching a class. She was talking about Jordan Peterson and Milo Yiannopoulos, and she kind of brought up like some clips that he had done in 2017. He was talking on Ontario State TV about like the pronouns issues, right? And so she brings up these clips. And she has like, okay, class, let's talk about how we feel about these issues. What do you think is the correct situation? And then she gets hauled in to like the dean. I forget which actual course she was teaching, but she gets hauled into the dean of that department with the teacher, and there's like, oh well, we got some anonymous complaints that you were talking about alt-right stuff in the classroom, and now we have to basically punish you. And she recorded the meeting. It was a 42-minute recording she put online. And you can go on YouTube and watch it, because the 42-minute recording is still up. I checked on it like 5 minutes ago. It's still there. And long story short, it came out. Nobody actually complained. The professor that she was TAing for was simply insulted that she would have the class listen to a Jordan Peterson clip. And that came out. There was an eventual lawsuit about it. And I think anyone who understands anything about how academia should be run understands this is a fucking ridiculous story. Now, if this sounds like I'm like coming down against your position here, Soy Pill, I'm really not.
No, I agree with, if everything you're saying is true. To be clear, Milo Yiannopoulos is like kind of a secret Nazi if you look at all into it. But he's also gay.
I'll send you everything I have.
But yeah, citing Jordan Peterson as an example, I don't think should be merit to getting suspended at all. That is silly. And just to be clear, like before we even go into any of the right wing bias stuff, I should have said this. I've experienced this myself as a left wing person in a gender studies class. I had some essay similar to this. It was like, write your reaction to this article about like emotional labor from like nail salon workers, and I said something that was against what the TA thought, and the TA gave me like a D essentially, and I was like, oh, like this is clearly me meeting the assignment credentials, but you don't like what I said. I don't think that should happen. It does happen. There is a left-wing bias in a lot of institutions insofar as, well, like reality leans left-wing, but also people have their little group thinks and their echo chambers. It happens, and I don't like it, and it should be addressed. But like, the difference here is, first of all, I think the religion stuff is more cut and dry, but even the right-wing stuff, these people usually aren't coming in of, this is just my opinion. When the example you brought up was this person, if it was just them reading fascist primary sources, okay, but it was, hey, you're coming at a fascist ideology and approaching it as like inherently bad. Okay, yeah, that's a left-wing bias if you want to call it that, but that's really just, how dare they not think like, the Nazis and Mussolini were neutral? I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think the reason the discussion's been a bit tough to have, and this is no personal offense on you, Soy Pill, but you've been very upfront about, you think all religion is just completely bogus, completely made up. And so it's like, when we're trying to talk about religious discrimination and why that might be a bad thing, it's like, I guess feel like for that to be a real discussion, there's got to have to be an agreement that like religious discrimination is bad, which would kind of acknowledge that at the very least there is a legitimate purpose / utility, along with the sincere beliefs of religious people.
Well, give us the argument for just real quick. Just hold on.
No, he doesn't have to, because we agree, right? Like, I agreed. If someone is being discriminated against for their religion, not because they use religion to justify a belief or some sort of like thing that you needed to prove with merit, but just because they were Muslim or Christian or whatever, yeah, I do think that is bad. I don't think your belief in a God should be something that you can discriminate against for hiring, for like, any sort of like treatment that way. I agree with him on that. That is bad.
But there are parts of what someone may believe as the result of their religion that you're gonna say, well, no, that's just nonsensical. We brought up the vaccine stuff earlier.
Sure. Okay. So aside from just real quick, just to kind of maybe get something we can chew on here, Gen Z. Aside from the vaccine stuff, right, which is fair, but that's a can of worms. That will be the discussion if we go on that track, right?
Right.
What other utility do you think that a religious belief in a thing could have that higher education would discriminate against that, like kind of like effect of you being religious? Like, so say you're Muslim.
I can give an example real quick. I mean, like, this is something that I hope you guys would agree with, but like food, yeah, if with Muslim, with halal or kosher, any of these things, if the institution says, I'm not going to accommodate you, you're not affecting other people by having diet restrictions. In the same way a vegan or a vegetarian isn't, and has nothing to do with religion. And I think that would be religious discrimination to say, like, I'm going to say the only options to you within a 10-mile radius are things that violate your religious beliefs, and this isn't really affecting other people by you choosing not to eat dairy and meat,
So,
or
my
that
friend-
meat has to be prepared a certain way.
I say this is like a 10th generation ordained Mormon elder. If my faith requires me to prepare my own food, then that's the price of my faith. Society need not bend to my faith.
It doesn't
Well,
need to, but I think it's discrimination.
No, it's more
to-
offensive to me that it would. because it's imposing something on
Hey,
everybody.
that's more
on my-
radical than me, buddy. But okay, I mean,
I would never said I wasn't. I'm just saying that's my individualism line, and
So just real quick, because Soy Pill, what you described also happened to me, because I have a minor in gender studies, and I definitely had a situation where the TA very clearly just wanted you to repeat their opinions back to them in your paper, and I didn't, and then I got a lower mark. Like that shit it's shitty. It shouldn't happen. It has no place in academia, but it does happen because you get power tripping people all the time. Yeah, I'll send you the Lindsay Shepherd stuff if you want to look at it, because it is an interesting case, even though it's now 7 or 8 years old. But here's the issue that I have, right? Is that the Lindsay Shepherd stuff, even though it was legitimately bad and there was legitimate there's legitimate discrimination against her for not even being right wing, because she wasn't right wing. She is now, but she wasn't right wing at the time. She's one of those people who kind of got pushed out of the leftist camp by just shitty experiences.
They forced her to do it. Yeah,
it's stupid, but it happened.
Hey, yeah, I was gonna say, you and me, we had our shitty gender studies experiences, and we're still, well, you're liberal, right? You keep saying
you guys
I
can
believe you.
trauma bond, right?
I posted a video like yesterday, said why I'm a liberal but not a progressive. So like, yes, I'm still a liberal for sure. But here's the thing, right? Is that the Lindsay Shepherd story happened in Canada, okay? And something that I've noticed when it comes to American politics is that all of the crazy left-wing fever dreams that Trump and MAGA and right-wing talking heads invent out of fucking thin air that don't actually happen in the United States. They do actually happen in Canada. Canada is the fever dream. Canada kind of sucks when it comes to left-wing radicalism. But like, I've noticed that there's, maybe you guys already think we're the 51st state or something, but like, you'll repost events happening in Canada by left-wingers overstepping, and they're really bad events. But then you say, look at how far the West has fallen. Trump needs to do something about this. And it's like, it's a different fucking country, guys. Like, our political situation is not the same as yours. And I think like every time you see something go viral on the right and people talking about it, a lot of the time it's not in America. And maybe the internet is just like rotted mega brains or something, you know?
Yeah, they weren't rotted before. It was the internet's fault.
if I may, so
wait,
just before
I actually had a
you-
question
before-
based on your individualism thing. Is like, do you think we should have accommodations for like disabled people?
So before I lose my thought, Dev, I'm real curious as to why is it that you think that Canada should still be, well, so actually I'll back up. Canada's still under the British crown. When are you guys ever gonna rebel? We did it like 250 years ago. It made things better.
Okay, I don't know if
We're actually under the Canadian crown.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right. Soy Pill, my individualism. Yes, let's hear it. Do I think there should be accommodations for people with disabilities?
Yeah, like ramps.
What accommodations?
Ramps.
Right. So I'll make it real boring for you. I'm largely comfortable with the current ADA framework that basically imposes as an ideal. The framework is institutions and groups large enough to afford to put out ramps and accessible bathrooms and all of that should do that. That's fine.
Okay, but
I
doesn't
wanna-
that go against your hold of like
Yeah.
rugged individualism?
Gen Z's been trying to
ideology?
get something out for a little bit.
Okay, go ahead. This is up.
Gen
I
Z,
was really
Yeah.
yield.
I was just gonna. I have another example. It's not higher education. It's more like elementary education. But I think it's another good religious.
Hey, so is Full Necky's essay, so it's about on par. Don't worry.
If y'all are good with that, I can give it.
Yeah, give us your example.
Go ahead.
The example where being religious puts you at a disadvantage in a way you feel in education, the way you feel that is inappropriate.
Yeah, well, it's not so much someone doing so individually. It's schools that have the Ten Commandments displayed publicly have been challenged by groups, including groups like the ACLU, and it's even gone up to the Supreme Court case, McCreary County in Kentucky versus ACLU, and the Supreme Court in 5-4 actually ruled that does violate the Establishment Clause to have the Ten Commandments posted. My question for, I guess it would be Soy Pill, but Dev, if you also are in Soy Pill or the same side for this.
I'm
like-
super against you putting religious doctrine as some sort of like thing to look up to in any government institution. Yeah, I don't agree with
Even
that.
if it's just posted on the wall of the classroom, just like 10.
Well, my religion is that we should murder every third child, and I think I want to post that in my classroom. Would you be cool with that?
do you think that's comparable when we're talking about?
I didn't say it was comparable. I said it's my religion. Are you cool with it?
That completely leaves out the sincere religious beliefs part of it, though. And,
Well, what if it was my sincere religious belief?
Because you can read the whole Supreme Court jurisprudence on religions, like the what is it, the Santeria. There's a whole case, the Lukumi Babalu I,
I'm just asking if you think I should be able to post my religious beliefs inside of a classroom. What about Satanism? That's one more concrete one I bet you could grasp onto, right? I want Baphomet. I want big Baphomet with his big swinging dong in every classroom.
Because my point is that the Ten Commandments are not just a purely religious document; they also have great historical significance, and if not just to the thousands of years ago when they were written, but also the foundation and formation of this country. I mean, would you disagree with that?
No, but so is the Bible. That doesn't mean that it needs to be posted everywhere.
Okay, so what if we took the same 10 rules from the 10 Commandments and just said it was something different, like 10 rules to live by? Is that okay?
I think that's
12 rules for life?
Purposeful obfuscation. But if you said, "Hey, be nice to each other," and you post that in your classroom, which you'd be surprised to see is actually everywhere in like those elementary school classrooms, I'd be more okay with that. But yeah, no.
Yeah.
As soon as it has religious stuff and you're trying to impose some sort of religious authority on any public education, I think it should not have any space there. And I don't think. But by the way, this is technically discrimination against religion. But this is exactly what I said. Was it's crossing the line when you are using your religion to impose on other people. If someone says, "Hey, I believe in God and the Ten Commandments, and I am a teacher," that's fine. If you say, "Hey, I'm instructing you on the Ten Commandments because I have an authoritative position over you and I think that you should learn this," that's when you should be fired and never hired again.
So Gen Z,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. I don't exactly know how you guys do it in the States, but I'll tell you how we do it here in Canada. You have public schools that are secular, with the exception of religious classes which are optional. And you might find those sort of things in a religious class in some schools, but those are optional classes that not all students have to take. And then you have private schools here, and private schools are generally religious ones. And if you want that sort of environment, go to a private school.
Well, yeah, I mean, that certainly you can easily say that, but then it's a question of, okay, if you're, I mean, I'm assuming you got to pay to go to private school in Canada, right?
It depends, because a lot of Catholic private schools are funded by the state here.
So you guys have more religious entanglement than the States, is what it sounds like.
No, the states give funding to private schools too. They get a lot of subsidies, especially religious ones.
But if you're like a religious kid and you want to go to like a school that'll teach you at least some kind of Christian stuff, there's usually a Catholic school in every town alongside the secular school.
So, okay, so then I think I see what you're getting at there, but I think it's a sidestep from the point I'm trying to make is, I guess, more back to Soy Pill. It's, if we put the same 10 rules verbatim from the 10 Commandments up, but just
keep
didn't
the
have
Sabbath day holy.
I was like, keep the Lord's day holy or whatever. How are you going to make that one secular?
Worship
Okay,
only. Right.
Take time off on the weekends.
Yeah,
basically.
worship no God before me. Like, what's the secular?
I am the Lord, thy
not
teacher.
God.
Thou shalt have no strange teachers before me. I
Yeah.
think that one would be fine.
Okay, let's
Thou
simplify
shalt
it to-
not. Yeah,
Let's
I don't
simplify
know.
it to Jesus' greatest commandment. When he was asked by the Pharisees, what is the greatest commandment of all of them? And he just says, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Is that, just take a second part, love
I
your neighbor as
think
yourself.
once you've obfuscated it enough to the point where you just say it's the golden rule, you can put it in the classroom. Sure.
Okay, because that was going to be my point, was like, the golden rule, I remember being in every single classroom I had growing up. And so if you just change the title on it, then it sounds like we're okay with it. But if you actually address where these
I
rules
think you have
come
to
from,
change
that's
it
the
so
issue.
much that it doesn't resemble the religious part anymore, which is why I'm okay with it. But as soon as it's like, well, actually, God said that you should, and then rule, I don't think that has any place in a school. But you could argue, I'm sure you would, that, treating others like you should be treated kind of is derived or inspired or has religious roots. So many of our movies and morals are religiously inspired, and that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. You can't disentangle that. What year do we live in? We live in the year after Jesus, right? Like, that's fine with me. But if you're imposing a religious doctrine on students in a public institution, I think that's a no-go.
But the issue, I just don't know how we're separating these things from each other, because these are rules that, even if you take religion completely out of it, these are still rules that are good rules to teach and good rules for people to abide by. They just so happen to be derived from a specific source. And so,
and when you disentangle them, then that's okay. And when you don't, then it's not okay.
So hold on, Gen Z, what exactly do you want here?
I'm saying, well, I think there's a double purpose here. First, you have the historical aspect of it, which is what's interesting about the Supreme Court case I referenced, this McCreary County versus ACLU, is because it was actually decided the same exact term as a different Supreme Court case called Van Orden versus Perry, which had to do with the Texas Capitol, and it had the 10 Commandments posted on the grounds of the Texas Capitol was a monument. And the same Supreme Court, same 9 justices, decided whether that monument to 10 Commandments was okay and whether the 10 Commandments in the classroom was okay. And they ruled 2 different ways. There were 5-4 It was 4-4 the same both ways, but I think it was Breyer that switched between the two cases, basically saying like, well, I don't like how much hubbub there was about this McCreary County, and they're clearly trying to indoctrinate the youth, and so I'm going to switch my vote on it. So I think though the argument is that there's a clear historical basis in, we talk about on Ordered Liberty, is that America is a propositional nation. It's built on a moral foundation that you can find in the Declaration of Independence, but it's a very Christian inspired, or at least a very Judeo-Christian inspired doctrine. Like, we just can't get away from that. But it seems like the goal here is just to completely separate. It's another school of legal thought. It's strict separationism, that we have to strictly separate. There has to be a strict wall of separation between church and state. That seems to just be, if you follow that line of logic, it's going to take you to some absolutely crazy places, and you can avoid following that line.
What is
crazy places?
Can you give us example of the crazy places, and I have some more super chats.
Because I'm a separation absolutist, but maybe you can change my mind.
Okay, so strict separation. So you can only. I'd have to think for a second, but I can.
While you
I
think-
do want to say this. Like, I think the difference here is that when you're posting these in the classrooms, this is kind of implying that the students should be following these things. It is imposing them on other people. In the same way, I would say you should absolutely not be allowed to stop a child from praying to God or like saying grace in front of his lunch. This is his belief, and you are discriminating against him by doing something that does not affect other people. Now, if he was in class and saying, "Hey, everyone else has to pray with me," yeah, I would say, fuck off, kid. Like, I don't give a shit. But the instant the line is crossed is when you're imposing this on other people or using it to justify how you treat other people. That's why in the vaccine case, it's like, yeah, if it was just you and this, like, you lived in the middle of nowhere and never interacted with some people, I'd say, yeah, whatever, I don't care. But I think it does affect other people. And we don't have to get into the debate about this, but this is like the clear line for me is, when is this affecting other people?
Okay, let me read some super chats, and you can think of some examples, and we'll give it back to you, Gen Z. $5 from
anti-intellectual of you, buddy.
Yeah, $5 from Alishness to say, when saying that Mormons are the quote-unquote richest religion without including that Mormons are required to tithe 10% of their salary seems patently dishonest. Thank you for the $5. Guys, you should be tithing 10% of your earnings to me, but let's go. $5 from Trib1.
Wick is God here, apparently. Okay, Jesus.
In my house, yes. Okay, if you can't go to school because someone else is gay and doesn't even talk to you, why isn't that a you problem? Mo religion versus mo agency. Thank you for the $5. $5 Canadian, unfortunately, from Testicle Johnson. The more educated people become, the less religious they become. This trend has existed since the 60s. Reality has a liberal bias. Thank you for the $5.
And an anti-religious bias.
Well, and then what happens next, though?
I guess
Hopefully the world gets better
what does
because we
happen
have fewer
next?
religious people.
But
It's
let
the
me get
rise
through
and
them.
fall of
Let me get through them.
societies.
Yeah, let me get through them, then we'll go. $2 from Cameraman 502 says, Gen Z, what does Fire have to say about this?
Just like a meme.
The OU stuff. I don't think they've made a.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think they've made a statement on it. $5 from the Trib1 to say bigotry is more so what is discriminated against in college. Religious people groups to be openly bigoted. Religion really isn't the issue. $5 from Alishness to say it confuses me that people want religion recognized in the classroom and decry idolatry, and then daily do a ritual in reciting a prayer to a flag. Quantum Fantasy member for 14 months. Thank you. My tithe, my lord. Yeah, you will be blessed for it. Okay. $2 from Lost Coyote of MA to say Wick Televangelist Arc. Let's go. Just for 3 easy payments and $99.99, you too can be forgiven of your cringe. Hallelujah. Cringe confessionals. Come on and down. Confess your cringe, and I will absolve you, and you will once again be in your natural base state.
Hey.
Amen, brothers and sisters. $5 from ZKing2929 says Gen Z just wants to force his worldview onto people and indoctrinate schools. If he really cared about morals, he wouldn't care about separation. And with that, Gen Z, how do you answer?
Yeah.
I mean,
What's the crazy slippery slope to separationism?
Okay, so if you want to do strict separation, so as a brief summary, the distinct schools of thought on the Establishment Clause, you've got the strict separationists and you've got the what are called non-preferentialists, which are just saying that yes, you can incorporate religion into the government. It just can't be it can't be preferential, elevating one religion over another. So if you want to get into specific examples, if you took a true strict separationist approach, you would have to ban the Bible from being even brought by a student to a school. You'd have to ban all references of any religion inside of a school. You'd have to
Okay.
I think
Well, then I agree with this. I think that level of strictness is ridiculous. Obviously, that you cannot disentangle religion from so much of what we rely on society today. Like I said, it's literally the year that we live in. So that is way too far for me. But I don't think that really touches on most of these court cases, which are not banning kids from having a Bible. It's, hey, you can't instruct or force this religion or kind of like give some sort of, instruction on this religion and showing that it is the thing you should do and not this is the religion. Let's talk about it.
on cases where you're talking about like state-sponsored prayer, yes, those are cases like that fit in exactly how you just described, but also cases where the passive display of the Ten Commandments, even when it's displayed in the form of a historical display. Like I believe in McCreary County, the display they ended up settling on was the Ten Commandments, flanked by the Declaration and the Constitution, and it was a historical display of founding documents from America. So
Wait,
I don't think you guys have addressed
someone in my
history.
chat was yelling at me about this. So, like, I agree that obviously the founders were religious; they had religious inspiration. The Ten Commandments were not the founding document of this, not even close to the way that the Declaration were or the Articles of Confederation. Like, that's why we don't have
No,
a state-sanctioned Lord's Day. That's why we don't have like. Well, I actually don't know about the history of adultery as a crime. I think it actually must have been a lot worse back then. But yeah, like this was not a founding document, and that's why it's not a historical thing. That's a bad argument, in my opinion.
the Bible and the Ten Commandments were the foundational philosophies for William Blackstone in English common law, and then the American founders cited to Blackstone's commentaries as the number one cited source, besides the Bible, by the way. The Bible was number one that they cited to in their writings. Number two, Blackstone's commentaries. So I don't think you can just hand wave away that these are foundational
Yeah, but how
moral
many degrees of
philosophical.
separation does it have to be? Yeah, do we cite the Blackstone thing? That might, I think, have much more valid to put the Blackstone documents in there. But then, like, how far back are we going to go? Like, the Bible is inspired in parts by like what Hammurabi's code. Like, should we put that up? Like, I think you're kind of just saying, well, it's inspired by, therefore I can cite it as a historical document. I think is doing a lot of legwork there.
Well, I know the legwork is trying to equate all these different historical things have equal contribution to the American founding philosophy. And when I say the Bible is the number one cited thing, it's because it is. And all the founding fathers in their writings, like they cited to the Bible more than any other document. So I don't know how many times they're citing to Hammurabi's code. So I don't. I guess I just don't understand where you're coming from, saying that well these things they have no place whatsoever being displayed as a passive display within a school because to the commenter's point, because doing so, according to me, or my goal in doing that is to try and indoctrinate and impose upon people when that's
I think
not.
it's elevating it to an importance that you're greatly exaggerating, given the fact that this level of importance is
No,
not given to the Bible or
no,
the Ten Commandments at all in any of these founding documents, right?
Soy Pill, the Declaration of Independence, we agree that's a founding document. Yes, you're a reasonable
Well, yeah,
man.
that's
Yes.
objectively true.
Okay,
Yeah,
when it
sure.
says all men are created equal, what part? Who created? What is the God in the framework of God? Is it the biblical God? Is it the God of the New Testament and the Old Testament? Or when they say that the creator, they are referencing on that, is there some other construct one could possibly find as the
No,
foundation for that?
you're not. I'm not disagreeing with you on the
Okay, so
fact
we're
that they
right.
were referencing
GenZ Attorney was
God.
right.
Yeah. Well, no, because I think you're again putting undue importance. It's not the idea that some of these people weren't religious.
I asked
First
you
of
what
all,
God
they
they're
weren't
referring
all.
to.
Oh yeah, I'm agreeing. Obviously, I wouldn't disagree with the objective
Okay.
fact that they were referring to the Christian God. What I'm saying is that saying that the Ten Commandments are just as important as the Declaration of Independence, and that's the justification for putting them up. Which, by the way, is really bearing the lead for the fact that these people want to put them up because they believe in God and want people to follow the Ten Commandments, not because they're like, oh, it is historically significant. When if you look at historical analysis of these things, no one is saying yes. The three founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the fucking Ten Commandments. No one puts these things on equal level, and that is why this doesn't hold water. So
Well,
yes,
the Federalist
obviously,
Papers.
or the Federalist
I mean,
Papers, or like the
the
Constitution and the
Federalist Papers
amendments. Like
reference the Christian God all the time.
I'm
So
not
if the
saying
Federalist
they
Papers are the
don't. I'm
DNA of it,
saying no
which they
one is
are,
holding these things to the same standard and saying, yep, they're all equal, put them into the classroom all on the same plaque, because they aren't. They are not the same level of importance.
So
So here's the thing: I've read some of the Federalist Papers, and they also say that the government should not emphasize one religion over another. They're very clear about that. That there should be that people should have, like, what religion you follow, if you choose to follow one, should be an individual choice that is protected by a government. That is the government's proper role in interfacing with religion, is not to tell you which one to follow, but to protect your right to follow them.
Right, and
They're very clear about that in the Federalist Papers.
The scam that gets pulled in academia is they put forth an ideology, don't call it a religion, and think that it trumps the religion. So you can say, I believe in this, that, and the other thing, unchallenged, labeling it an ideology, and then
Why do you keep saying unchallenged? Like we
without,
literally
as
gave
Soy Pill
examples of
would say,
challenge.
studies suggesting, experts saying, or scientists agreeing, then we have to
I
accept it
think
unchallenged.
You can make fun of like citing academia, but it's
Well, let
more right
Dev
than
go.
any
I
religion.
want to hear what Dev has to say.
Like, I'm pretty sure everyone here disagrees with scientism. Okay, like science is a process; it is not a dogma.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if your criticism applies to anybody who's in this call.
I might have cited a scientist at some point, which invalidates my whole argument, right?
No, it just doesn't empirically prove the point. It's one of many data points. It's a good data point.
A data point? Wait, this sounds like science. I don't know if I trust it.
Engineer, it's all I can do.
So hey, Gen Z, I think I know what you're getting at, Gen Z, because there's definitely, if you read any of the earliest liberal philosophers, you understand that they're all Christians, and they're all Christians for a reason, because we are all equal before God eventually became we are all equal before the law. You can trace the DNA of these ideas back to a religious foundation. It's definitely the case that liberalism as a political school of thought is born out of European Christianity. That's just true. But what liberalism also allows for is the possibility that people are not religious. And that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah, and I think, and honestly, like, look, it's a fascinating historical debate when we look at, the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, which is paired with the Free Exercise Clause, which oftentimes actually stand in contrast to each other. And I think I have it verbatim, but I might mess up a word or two. But it said, the Congress shall make no
shall not establish
Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Oftentimes, what if the free exercise of I get elected as mayor, and the free exercise of my religion is to open my legislative session with a prayer, and all of a sudden, my free exercise is running up against the Establishment Clause. So there's naturally is a lot of tension there. That's why these are really interesting debates. But to try and focus it in on the topic today, it feels like the solution that is being proposed by my opponents, my friends on the left here, is that there has to be, in every example I brought up, it's either that, yes, that is something that should be just entirely excluded, and in fact, it's a good thing that we are performing this religious discrimination, which once again points for honesty. But if the whole premise here is whether or not there is religious bias and religious discrimination is happening, and the answer is effectively yes, but it's a good thing, then I don't know where. Like, that's why.
So
again,
if you like,
part of the discussion.
If you like read any liberal political theory, they do lay out a solution for this, and the solution is the division of public and private domains. Right? In private domains, you can do what you want. You can follow whatever religion you want. So if you own a shop, it's your private property. You run this shop. You want to hang a cross in the door or something because you're a Christian. You go ahead. It's your private domain, right? But in the public domain, so we're talking about institutions, public property. These things should be secular. Yes. Because it's a public domain, meaning that it is a communal square where everyone's standards have to be respected to some degree, rather than it being a private space that is parochial to your specific standard.
Yeah, I definitely hear that and understand that, but then what flies in the face of that, and I've never even fully understood myself how we are squaring these circles, but the same time that the Congress is passing the First Amendment, passing this ban on the establishment of a religion, they're also ordaining a chaplain to preside over the Congress. They're also in a system where there are 13 states. I believe 4 of the 13 had official state churches of the state, and another 3 or 4 they didn't have like official state sponsored churches, but they had something similar. So it's like we're looking at something where there clearly is a clear tension, but the solution to just completely exclude religion from anything public, which the topic of tonight is education, but take it broader to everything, everything public, It feels like it's a bridge too far, is the point
Well,
that I'm trying to make.
GenZ, I don't know if you've addressed my criteria, and maybe I'm not clear enough on these, and that's fully on my part. But tell me if you have an issue with not you can disagree. I think you do, but like tell me if this is not coherent. Religion should not be discriminated against in public institutions, insofar as no one should stop you from practicing your religion, unless practicing your religion means that you are trying to force it on other people or have somehow interact with other people as per the way that your religious ideology tells you to. So right, like you praying or this guy praying at the beginning of like some legislative session, if he wants to pray, I think that should be fine. No one should stop them from doing that. I agree that is bad. But if he's saying that other people have to follow him in prayer, if he's saying that we now have to take 5, breaks in the middle of our session because I'm Muslim and I want to go pray, and it's like you are slowing down the process due to your religion, this is where I have an issue with it. And I don't think this is taking it too far. It's as soon as it affects other people, right? That's my limit. Is there? I know you disagree, maybe, but like, is that somehow a slippery slope?
No, I think that is consistent, especially when we talk about the imposition on others, and that's really the main point that I led this whole thing off with, is because we started out by talking about this girl who wrote a reaction discussion post that relied heavily on religion, and I don't see that as being that. I see that as, you can say that is the practice, the exercise of religion. That's not making an imposition on others. Yes, we can grade it on objective like writing standards and criteria as for how well it's written, but so long as it is a reaction, which is what she was asked to do. And yeah, reaction to what she was asked to do. And if it ties into the article that was assigned, then that seems to me like it.
Well, again,
at least a partial credit
if they said you're not allowed to do this, I would agree with you. However, they said you've done it and it's bad and I'm grading it poorly because you don't justify anything, then I think that's fine as well, right? Like you're not imposing anyone, and she's allowed to write her stupid fucking essay, but like it's bad and she got a bad grade.
But we're still conflating the two things of a reaction discussion post to some sort of well-cited, well-sourced academic research paper.
Even if you follow the rubric, which you did, she gets a D, which is a failing grade. So even if we're as charitable as you are, she gets a grade that does not pass. So if we want to agree that maybe there was a bias here, there could have been. We can't read their minds, but let's just say there was, because a 0 is a 0. That doesn't mean that this is something that is being religious discriminated insofar as like, oh, we're not letting you practice religion. This person maybe just got a shittier grade. In the same way that Dev and I acknowledge that sometimes TAs have biases against these opinions. Maybe she got a shittier grade because of that, but that's not the reason she failed. She failed because she sucks.
See, that's the same argument that people use to stifle speech by saying, well, if we don't actually literally stop your ability to speak, then you're free to you can talk to this wall all day long. Look, you're speaking. But that nullifies the point of actually having a right to speak, is the ability
no one
to have
stifled her
people
speech. They just said this sucks and you should write a better essay.
You're making the same argument that, well, unless they actually prohibit her from practicing her religion, then there is no discrimination here.
But they're not prohibiting her from practicing. They're saying you can't use this as justification for your feelings that has no substantive rebuttal to the points made. It's just not a good... She could have used religion and says, hey, religion says that nuclear family is better, that traditional family roles are better, and I'm going to substantiate this with evidence of how this makes people happier. But instead she just says, well, God said so, which is not a sufficient reaction based on their criteria.
If we're talking about gender roles and societal norms, like I think saying God said so is actually, like, yes, maybe you can substantiate it with a Bible verse, like, yeah, that would make it better, but the lack of a Bible verse doesn't mean it's a 0.
Would you
yes,
no, hold on. Would you have this standard in other fields other than psychology? So say you were getting an engineering degree or you were in an engineering class and you were asked to like show the structural stability of a bridge, right? And you needed to prove that this bridge was structurally sound. And then you said, it was revealed to me by God in a dream. Do you think that should get a passing grade?
No, of course not.
Okay, so what's the difference here?
Because when we're talking about react to an article that is about the societal expectations of gender norms, like, I think we can agree those are very distinct concepts. If even we were talking about, we'd stay on this topic of psychology. If we were talking about react to this article that is a study about the effects of this certain medicine on someone's psychological state, on someone and its ability to impact someone who has schizophrenia, and you say the impact is good because God says so. Okay, yeah, that'd be bad too. that would not be sufficient at all. But we're not talking about something that there is necessarily an empirical component to it. We're talking about reacts to this article's, I guess,
Right, but again,
proper
Jensen Lawyer, like you
gender
agree
norms.
that if you were to write this essay with the same opinions that this person has, and her opinions being that God said so, you could absolutely write a substantive, well-meaning reaction that says, "Hey, God says these things, and this article says these things, and this is why I think the Bible's recommendation for this is better, or this is why I have the gut reaction to default to God because of this." But she didn't do this, and she didn't even cite the Bible properly, if that's all she was going to do. So, given all of this, that's why they gave her an incomplete, essentially. Like that's what you could have done given her reasoning, and it's not discriminating against her ability to have that opinion. It's her ability to describe and elaborate and articulate that opinion, which she did very poorly.
So the problem I just keep having with that is, I guess, yeah, I just keep going back to what type of assignment we're dealing with. The fact that and okay, if you could show me, and I'm completely making an assumption here, but it's just based on my own experience taking classes like these and seeing these types of discussion posts, I would put money down that there are other people that wrote
It
the
wrote
same
worse, yeah.
level or worse that did not get zeros. I could almost guarantee you that. Like,
Yeah,
that's
and
I'm saying that's
again,
purely an assumption,
I've
but
conceded already. If that happened, if it came out and we saw these other students and it was just as bad, if not worse, and they got 10 points or like 12 points, I'd be like, yep, that's like a definite TA bias, which me and Deb both acknowledge definitely exists, and that's not good, if that's the case. However, given the fact that this person was put on fucking academic leave for her, like, again, super gentle response saying, "This is what I want from you if you're going to fix this," I think that it's absolutely deserved, 100%. And this institution
Well,
should put her back and apologize
yeah,
for it.
let me try this, right? Gen Z, you recognize that someone could have a belief in, let's say, I don't know, originalism, okay? They believe in originalism is a correct way to view the Constitution when making legal rulings on it, right? And when SCOTUS should rule, they should rule from an originalist perspective. You can argue that well, and you can argue that poorly. And
yeah.
grading someone poorly for arguing that point poorly does not necessarily mean that the person who is doing the grading doesn't value original, is discriminating against originalism, right? Because they could grade someone who argues originalism well with a passing grade, with a good grade, right?
Yeah, no, of course, I'm not going to disagree with that. But you have to go by based on the rubric that's provided for your assignment. And when there is a part of the rubric that covers, okay, how well written is your assignment, and that's 5 out of 25 points. The other 20 points are split between whether it ties into the article and whether it presents a thoughtful reaction or response to the article. There's a big "or" there because, yeah, maybe I am being too soft, but if you read it strictly, which is what I do for a living, I read individual words very strictly. If all you're being asked to do is provide a response and not a summary, because that's what it says, a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary. She obviously did not leave a summary. She did provide her response to it. You don't like her response, and I agree her response is not very well sourced or cited, but we can't disagree. This was her response.
So-
and from what it seems, it was
Okay.
tied into the article.
Would you
But-
give this much credence if she said that, like, here, I'm making this up on the spot. The article said that gender roles could be harmful. I don't think so. I think gender roles are good. That's my reaction.
Well, no, obviously, because that wouldn't meet the word count requirement. Just as a bare
Okay,
minimum.
and I just kept saying that ad infinitum to 650 words.
So, sorry, say it again. It's the gender roles
Yeah.
are bad.
Gender roles are good. Traditional gender roles are good, and the article was bad. I had a gut reaction that this article wasn't good, and I'm going to keep talking for 650 words. Do you think this meets the criteria of the assignment and should be given a 17 out of 25?
Okay, just to clarify, is it literally that phrase repeated over and over again, or is it?
No, I look in the thesaurus and I just keep making it sound a little different, but I keep repeating
Because
it.
those are typically what I see as discussion posts being. They
Yeah,
make
it's
their
the
first
worst
point.
thing written you've ever seen in your whole fucking life. It's even worse than possibly that she could ever have done. Yes.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I mean, under this rubric, probably, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's
Well,
not
I
very
think there's a
satisfactory, but
realistic expectation for junior college students to write a little better than that. And just saying, well, the rubric, like I'm interpreting it super strictly, is like maybe fair if that's really all they wanted. But it's pretty clear that they wanted something a little more substantive than it's good because God and you are wrong. Because that's essentially what she wrote. So.
So I just stepped away for like 2 minutes just to go read the paper. I just found it. I read it. It is an absolute dog shit paper. I can't believe anyone's defending this thing. I don't know if I'd give her 0. I'd definitely give her less than 5 if I was marking this. She might get like a 3 out of 25 or something. Like it is a piece of shit paper.
That's 3 points of liberal bias, Dev. Actually,
Well,
you know
let
what?
me-
I will concede right here, guys. There should be 3 points fewer of anti-religious bias from this TA. Too
So I
much,
think-
in fact.
To your point about the TA being put on leave, no, I can agree with that. I think that could be a bit much. I think we can point to counter examples of this happening the other way. One that jumped to my mind was Ilya Shapiro at Georgetown Law School, who was getting hired to be there, and during the hiring process, tweeted out that when Biden said he was going to pick a black woman for the Supreme Court, he said there's a great woman candidate that would be a great Supreme Court justice, but because he said he has to be a black woman, or he has to pick a black woman, he has to settle for a quote lesser black woman in Ketanji Brown Jackson. And those 3 words, lesser black woman, created a whole media political firestorm. They opened an investigation into him and whether or not he violated the school's discrimination policies. He ultimately got cleared for it because he hadn't been hired yet there, and the policies didn't apply to him, which he responded kindly by the very next day saying, yeah, I don't want the job anyway, I'll go somewhere else. I think we can all agree that that's a very silly situation, or maybe not. I don't know. What do you think it was wrong for him to have been investigated for discrimination based on a tweet like that?
I mean,
Enough about
especially
it.
considering that
Haven't-
Kentucky sits on the school board of a very race-minded private school that believes in things like present racism is the answer to past racism. That's an Ibram X. Kendi reference, by the way. And this is from her confirmation hearings, by the way, lest we think I'm getting into 4chan too much. I am, but that's not where I got this.
See, no, I just don't know enough about this specific case. The reason that I brought up the Lindsay Shepherd case is because I know that one inside and out, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
But
that.
this case,
Yeah.
I just don't know anything about her. I'm sorry.
I'll say this, and I'm sure this is the common ground, Gen Z, is that sometimes this stuff goes entirely too far, and it's like, why the hell are we investigating this person for their random tweet that showed a slight anti-liberal bias? Yeah, that's probably like, I don't know exactly this case, but I've seen it go way too far. I've been in the most liberal place in California colleges, and people get accused of some pretty crazy shit. That said, I think there's barely stuff that goes over the line, and for the most part it's usually super deserved when you look into what they said and what their actual beliefs are. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Like as bad as the late 2010s 2020-ish era of cancel culture was on the left, it's pretty much done now. Like no one's getting fucking canceled anymore. That
nah,
shit's
it's
over.
coming back. Woke's back, baby. We're winning the midterms and we're woken up the place. Transgenderism for everyone.
Okay.
Please don't bring back the canceling. I hated that shit.
Yeah,
You're
well,
canceled, buddy.
look, it's alive and well on the right wing. I believe you've been canceled, Dev, haven't you? For
Oh yes, about
yeah,
a dozen times in the past 3 months for a bunch of fucking rightoids. Yes.
Sounds like it's not a particularly bad problem if you're still here.
he has to
Well,
he has to
be fair-
lower himself to be on a whip panel now.
Mm.
To be
I
fair,
let-
I have pretty much destroyed my fucking channel though. Like I know that you've looked at the metrics. Like my channel's fucking tanked. It's done.
It's
over.
It's
totally Jover.
It's
Did
not
you say
Jover.
did you say like black women in video games? Is
But he
okay or
has
something
taken a
crazy?
substantial hit. Yes, oh, that's true. Let me read these super chats, and we are running on time, right? And I want to give everyone a chance to have closing thoughts, and I don't want to keep you hostage here, right? And we'll do that. So let me get through these super chats, then I'll give it to you guys for closing thoughts on the topic at hand, and then we'll see what we do after that. I might stay, I might not. $10 from Zetsway to say, lemon test. Does it have a secular purpose? Is it advancing or inhibiting a religion? Does it excessively entangle church and state? This will always be intensely fact dependent. Thank you for the $10.
I didn't know that, but that sounds like pretty good criteria.
Well, real quick on
That's always
that.
a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, real quick on that. So the lemon test comes from a case called Lemon versus Kurtzman, and it had that 3-pronged test for whether or not something violates the Establishment Clause. As we pointed out, it's ultra fact dependent. I will say one of the funniest things the Supreme Court did recently in law school, we were learning like, okay, we learned about the lemon test, but we kind of felt like it hasn't been used in a while, that maybe it was going away, but we weren't entirely sure. And then the Supreme Court comes out in like 2022, I forget what case, but they basically said, oh yeah, by the way, the lemon test is dead and it has been for 20 years. And we're like, well, that's news to us. But no, the main test now, I believe, is the history and tradition test, which is the same test they use for abortion and Dobbs.
Oh, they just decided to change those tests, right? Real original of them. Okay, $5
About
from
those
Lawson.
lemons?
Lawson Harrison for $5 says religious discrimination in academia is conservatives 1450. Thank you for the $5. And then $20 from Echem.
Wait, what's
Chem.
1450? Are they? Is that like a 1350?
Yes, it's a 1350 reference.
Oh,
Yeah.
We've increased the dog whistle numbers. Okay.
Yeah. And $20 from Echem. Before I read this, just to be clear, I have a if we get $30 more, I will say a slur. I will call one of these panelists a slur.
Let me know first so I can leave.
No, it's the R slur. So
That's a
you'll be fine.
TOS slur?
No, it's not TOS.
Is it
I'll
gonna
call
be a
you a
hard
retard.
R?
No one has
Yeah,
to pay me
retard.
to do
Look,
that.
look, I want to make some money. Okay, so
Yeah,
$30
we
more,
need
we can get that.
donations.
But $20 from Echem.
You content lock the R word? Damn.
$20 from Echem to say this. Streamrift. You apparently have no idea what science is in any capacity. You mentioned working in tech. I hope you don't have a CS degree because you don't deserve science associated with you to any extent. Good job just arguing feels. Do you want to respond to that?
I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I've been advised by my attorney to never visit New Zealand because I'd face 250,000 years in prison because they couldn't take a video down that I kept up. So I feel like technologically I'm internationally interesting, but that's not everybody's cup of tea.
I am
What was the video?
so curious what the video
Yeah,
is.
what was the video?
It was the Christchurch shooting. About
So they-
500,000 people saw it back in March of 2019.
Oh, you had, like, a
you were
copy of it on your
posting
channel or
like a
something?
mass murder, and they're like, "Please take down this mass murder," and you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, the UK government sent me an email. The New Zealand police, it's like 10-year prison sentence. They had some kid that shared a link to two guys facing 28 years in prison. He was like 22 or something like that. But they have a whole like censorship department. My attorney told me to stop tagging them on X, Twitter at the time. And I thought he said that was the line. Well, yeah, the attorney now,
God.
they're like, it's one thing to do it, it's another to taunt them. So I said, okay. So yeah, I got an email from the UK Metropolitan Police. It was a thing.
You know what? Another bridge built. I don't think you should go to jail for posting the Christchurch shooting. That's kind of fucked up.
My man,
Yeah.
free speech.
Yeah,
Whoa,
that is
we
free
did it,
speech, yes.
gang. Okay.
We got more tips, guys. We got the hard R coming out yet.
Not yet. But maybe by the time that closings are done, we can get to the hard R. Let's go first with Dev, and then we'll go around and let Soy Pill have the last word. Go ahead, Dev.
I was barely here. I don't even know what you want me to say. Thanks
What are
for-
your closing
thanks
thoughts on the subject? Jesus.
Thanks for subbing me in right at the end, Wick. I appreciate it.
You were here for
Um,
the conversation. End cap.
I was here for like maybe a third of it. Yeah, I'd say. There is probably religious bias in higher education. I think part of it is for the reason that Soy Pill said, that religious people just on average tend to not be as smart as secular people. There's obviously many exceptions to that. I'm speaking in very broad general averages here. Also just a lot of topics just kind of don't, they don't mix well with religion. I think if you're talking about STEM, you don't really need religion to do anything in STEM. If you're talking about the humanities, maybe you need a little bit more religion. There's definitely a place for religion in education, I think, but it should not be front and center. It should not be the main thing. But the actual fucking essay that this chick wrote was dog shit. It was so fucking bad. Like, I feel like if you gave me 15 minutes, I could argue her point better than she did. Like,
I would hope it'd be less time than that.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, Dev. I do appreciate you. And I do want to hear about your cancellation stories one day, right? Maybe we can have a discussion on right-wing cancel culture. It should be fun. Go ahead, Gen Z, please.
Thank you. Before I do my closing, I just got one quick question for Dev, since I think we talked about this before you got in. A big point for me in the essay is the fact that it's basically one of these discussion posts. I heard you have background in academia. Does that weigh anything on your opinion of, like, because when I think discussion post, I think I'm just going to rant stream of consciousness to the word count, the word limit, and that's that.
I mean, yeah, but she has to actually back up her point with something, right? Like when she quoted Genesis like once or twice, I think, and she didn't even really properly quote it. She just kind of like paraphrased it. It's like, well, even in this sort of thing, you should be quoting it properly. There's a way to do like proper quotations of the Bible. She didn't do it. There are other conservative philosophers who have talked about these ideas. She didn't reference any of them, even in a casual sense. Like it's very easy to say, oh, we have inherited these traditions and they've been passed down from like generation to generation. And it turns out that the crucible of time is in fact like an evolutionary process, because all the best traditions, they stood up to all these challenges, and that's why they've been passed down to us. So maybe we should adhere to certain gender roles because it is good for us and it's good for society and it's good for our kids. Like, you can make these arguments. She just didn't do any of it. She didn't fucking do anything.
Yeah, no, I get that. I guess just my main thing when I read this and having seen, I mean, it's been a little while now from college, but these discussion posts, like, I just had the lowest of expectations for when people would respond to what I said or what I would take it upon myself because I try to hold myself to a higher standard. But from what I would see, it's like this is pretty bad. I agree, it's not well written at all. Is it like bottom of the barrel of what I've seen? Absolutely not. And if this were like an end of term paper or something that like, okay, I would agree. This is like even worse now with the lack of citations and whatnot. But I don't know. I guess that's why I just say it's like I didn't see this as like an ultra rigorous assignment, and so the lack of rigor in her answer didn't really bother me that much, especially not to the point where she should get a 0. But
It kind of read like a 12-year-old wrote it, to be honest.
That's generous. 12-year-olds can write a lot better than that.
yeah.
True.
But anyway, okay. Well, yeah, I just wanted to ask that quick because that was kind of one of my main things. But okay, yeah. And my closing, yeah, it's I think when we look at this example, I mean, well, we've all agreed that she was given a bit of an unfair shake. We disagree on how unfair it was, but yeah, do I think she should be elevated to like a speaker or an influencer now? No, of course not. Especially not if she writes like that.
She's gonna be though.
but
Just watch. She'll
Already
be on like
happening.
Blaze
She's already
TV
at
by like
PBS.
next
She's,
year.
she's the next Riley Gaines. Yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
god.
well, yeah, we'll see. But aside from all that, I think, yeah, I mean, it's a tough discussion to have when it's like, yeah, we can bring up examples of that go both ways, and I'll find large parts of agreement. You know, I didn't get to bring it up, but the example of the coach that was praying after football games as like a purely voluntary, players could come pray with him if they wanted to, and they were, and he got fired by the school, and the Ninth Circuit upheld his firing as yeah, that violated the Establishment Clause. Thankfully, the Supreme Court overturned it, but it's like I feel like that's something we could all agree on. Yeah, he shouldn't have been fired. Example after example of like individual things where we can agree, yeah, okay, yeah, this is bad, or yes, this is a form of discrimination or bias, but in some cases, it is actually a good thing. It is actually necessary. To Soy Pill's once again credit for honesty, thinks that there should be more religious bias and more religious discrimination. Yeah, so yeah, I just think that kind of proves the feeling, proves the complaint that folks on the right are having of like when there is a feeling of yes, not only does it exist, but there needs to be more of it. It's like, well, gosh, that's not great. That doesn't feel great. So I think I agree though with Dev and him coming in. It's hard to have it like purely on the pure religious thing. I think the much broader issue is the right wing conservative discrimination, or just like negative attitudes and sympathy. Like yeah, negative attitudes in these types of institutions, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the media, whether it's academia. But yeah, no, I think the discussion tonight
Just call it cultural Marxism. Do it. Do it.
in the cultural Marxism that's happening. But yeah, I think that largely summarizes it. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, YouTube, GenZ Attorney. I haven't been posting much videos lately just because of the whole new law firm type stuff. Very busy with that. Yeah, and every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, me and Ryan Mullally, along with a rotating panel of guests, discuss the news of the week as filtered through America's founding philosophy. And I'm glad the Federalist Papers came up tonight. We talk about a new one every week. It's great stuff. And then, yeah, just talk about the news of the week. I've had some great guests like Zetsui and Deej, who you've seen in the chat. They have been guests so far. But yeah, every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. I'm streaming it as well as Ryan. So you can find us there. And yeah, I guess YouTube and Twitter, GenZ Attorney.
Check them out, gang. Thanks for being here. Josh, Streamrift, go ahead.
Well, I think, one of the things I like to folks will sometimes when they're dogging on America and we get in these religious discussions, they'll say things about how originally the Constitution was only written for white American land or white male landowners. And the funny thing about it is, if you look at the through line on American jurisprudence over the last 250 years, we have an enormous amount of doctrine that says we really do try to treat everyone equal. One of the things I did bring up tonight was the Mormon Extermination Act, which is a disgusting thing that happened. One of the things that I do adore about this country is no one would tolerate that today. If, for example, some governor were to issue that, we would all collectively find great offense to that. And I think
MAGA
that's a testament of
Extermination
the
Act.
American compromise, which is worth getting over
Who's
your
voting for
neighbor's, prayer call, in my humble opinion. So, I think here we've got someone my conspiracy hat is on real hard about why this is a story of any interest in any news cycle, because as has been discussed, the paper itself does not sound like it was particularly redeemable or defensible. I don't believe that GenZ Attorney would like to defend the merits of this client as a decent, God-fearing piece of academic effort, because it would just be a rough set of facts to work with. But the fact of the matter is, again, I do think there is a culture war going on in academia that skews very heavily towards more of an ideology and anti-religion. But yeah, again, I'm just I'll close on, I think one of the greatest things about this country is that collectively we do value equality, and we're willing to have uncomfortable or comfortable discussions about it. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Well, thank you for being here. Where can people find you?
My favorite place to talk shit, you guys aren't going to believe it, and I hope everyone can be cool, I'm sure they will struggle, is LinkedIn, actually, of all things. About 10% of my network's the intelligence community. I argue with judges and attorneys with mit vigor und porpoise, and GenZ Attorney might find it interesting that yesterday the Eastern District of Virginia entered a default against 6 institutional defendants, or rather entered the motion for it, and I'm waiting on the default. So subsection 1983 attorneys are sorely needed, and we can leverage those a lot more if we're really feeling the pain. Yeah.
Really quick on
Joshua
that,
Stacey.
the default, did they not answer?
No, I did a Rule 12b1, and they thought that I needed leave, and what messed with them was Chambers said file a motion, but they thought it was conditional, so they blew their 14 days. They're at day like 23 right now. The Virginia AG defending 3 sitting judges defaulted on a pro per, so they feel great tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Soy Pill, please.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to be repeating myself insofar as if the specific example is this essay, it's dog shit, like Dev said. It deserved a failing grade. Whether or not there was some bias there, we could probably agree, but it doesn't really matter, because ultimately, if the result is to claim religious discrimination and get someone fired who is the kindest, nicest person to someone who described their entire ideology and persona as demonic, then I think there should be more religious discrimination. I really do think that people like this should be shamed and laughed out of academia. They don't have any way to substantiate their beliefs other than my book said so. This is not sufficient to me. Also, I Googled the Mormon extermination thing, and this is cursory, you probably know more about it, but it seems like not very many people died. In fact, prevailing consensus among scholars is that there's insufficient evidence to suggest that militiamen invoked the order to justify their actions during that period. And to compare this to chattel slavery and Jim Crow is laughable. But maybe we should have DEI for like stupid religious people, because Lord knows they're not getting, by on their own merit. Last thing, Super Chatter asked me to say, I soiled you guys. Got them, but it sounds like I peed on you. But anyway, thanks for listening.
Yes,
I'm debating another person at 7 about the boat strikes. So thank you for coming, everybody.
Speaking of the boat strikes, tomorrow's topic at 6 p.m. Eastern will be the morality and legality of the Venezuelan boat strikes. Did Hegseth commit a war crime? We have Doobie. We have Ace. Not your Ace, don't worry. We have Mooncake, who will be rating in here in a second. And it should be a great discussion, so come on in, come on by. Also, check out Soy Pills later tonight. It should be fun.
And also, Wick, I'm going to start putting your fucking channel in my descriptions, because I'm mad at how no one subscribes to you for some fucking reason. It's stupid.
It's all, you know what? I just enjoy. Look, I'm making money, so it's all good, right?
But you should make more money.
You know what?
Fucking gentleman, you guys should be tipping him more.
Yeah, everyone goes
very
subscribe.
disgusted with you. This should be at least $1,000 every time. At least $1,000.
Yeah.
Wick,
You know
am I
what?
right?
I couldn't agree more. Okay. With that, if you
Hold on, can I get some of these Soy Pill handouts as well? I've lost like 20,000 subs since.
Oh yeah, go sub to Dev, who lost guys. If you want to bring back woke, subbing to Dev will bring woke back. So
Well, can I
my
just
God.
speak to that for just? I know I'm keeping you guys hostage. I said I wouldn't, but I think this is very important, and I think it speaks to a lot of the discussions we're having on the left recently. Like, if we want to bring people back from the right or from the center right or from not voting Democrat, right, and we want to kind of bring them back into the fold, I think that we need to support people like Dev. Dev is someone who
Oh my
stood on his
God.
principles. Dev is someone who said, hey, the left does a lot of crazy shit, but the right's worse now. And instead of just casting him off, as many have, as a Nazi or a Nazi enabler, right? We need to kind of be like, no, this guy, at least for now, is on our team. And we should kind of support
Well, to be honest,
him.
like that was like Vosh that did that specifically. Like,
Yes.
back in 2019, the Dev as a Nazi thing came from Vosh. So like it's very like not from liberals, it's from leftists.
None of my people would care if you were a Nazi.
wow.
Okay. I mean,
On that note, I am woke subbing to Dev right now.
okay,
my
woke
God.
subbing.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. Okay, sub woke. Okay, with that. Okay, yeah, I think we're done. We'll right into Mooncake,
Thanks, Vic.
and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Yeah, and let Mooncake know this is a hate raid. Okay, just FYI.
Yeah. Hate.
Yes. And I'll see you
All right.
guys tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. See you later.
Bye.